Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here with us. This evening, I am calling to order this Operations Management Budget and Government Accountability Departmental Budget hearing of April 12th to order. I am Mally Rosado, the Council President, and also co-chair of the OMBGA Committee. I'd like to introduce my members. To my right, I have Assistant Majority Leader Marilyn Rossetti, followed by Councilman Amilcar Hernandez. To my left, I have Councilman John Gale. Councilwoman Shirley Sturgeon is here. She'll be joining us briefly. And on the screen, we have Councilwoman Tiana Hercules. And Councilman Nick LeBron will also be joining us shortly, and here is Councilwoman Shirley Sturgeon. So this evening we have two presentations. The first one is from the Hartford Public Library, followed by the Hartford Police Department. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome and call to the table Bridget Quinn, who is the Executive Director for the Hartford Public Library, along with the Chief Financial Officer, Carl Fisher. Welcome. And I believe we also have the Chairman of the Board, David Barrett. Is that correct? Yes. Welcome. Thank you.
Good
You have the
afternoon,
floor.
Council President. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this afternoon, and it's nice to see you all. And David, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. So I think all of you know me. I'm David Barrett. I'm honored to be the chair of the library's Board of Directors. And first, we'd like to thank you, the council, for giving us this opportunity to discuss the library with you. We have a lot of exciting news and present our budget for fiscal year 2024. We also thank you for your incredible, generous support of the library, both financially and in so many other ways. The partnership between the city and the library is strong, and you play a key role in that partnership, so thank you. Now, Bridget will present the nuts and bolts of the budget, but I'd like to say a few words overall about the library. As you all are aware, Hartford Public Library is far more than a traditional library that lends out books, DVDs, and other materials. We are a service organization that is a vital civic anchor for the city of Hartford. We provide free resources that inspire reading, guide learning, and encourage individual exploration, including circulating collections and offering programs in 7 locations across the city. Programs supporting Hartford Public Schools and students, support for job seekers, immigration services, concerts, exhibitions, lectures, and an archive of special collections spanning the city's 400-year history through the Hartford History Center. Immigrants use our services to learn English or start on their path to citizenship. Job seekers use our services to enhance their skills on their path to employment. Teenagers use our new media lab to train in the latest virtual technology. Children attend our reading programs that promote a love for learning. We have a new music streaming service you may know about called The Beat that features local artists. And just this month, Leadership Greater Hartford announced that Hartford Public Library will receive its Polaris Award for Community Leadership for 2023, which is quite an honor. We operate through a strategic plan that guides us over the next 3 to 5 years. In her presentation, Bridget will present the details of that plan, but I just want to make one point. Part of the development of that plan was listening to the community. It was no surprise to learn we are a trusted institution at a time when so much mistrust exists. We are valued and appreciated, and we intend to continue to listen and respond to the community's needs. And this is where your support is so vital. The funding the city provides is critically essential to that continued service to the Hartford community. Now, before I turn the microphone over to Bridget, let me say a few words about our current circumstances since the flooding that occurred on Christmas Eve. While the main downtown location remains closed, our branches have stepped up in a big way. They all are offering expanded hours and expanded services. For example, U-Media team now is housed at the Albany branch. I attended a Kwanzaa program at Albany in December, and at a packed house, I saw many of our downtown regulars in attendance. They had made the transition already from downtown to Albany. The Park Street branch is open Sundays. And then just this morning, in breaking news, we reopened the Robkins branch in Clay Arsenal. And while I was there, I saw a microcosm of our customers, from toddlers to seniors. It was a beautiful event and a beautiful snapshot of all that we do. In addition, our partners have been fantastic in opening their doors to our programs. Let me give you two examples: the Sunday Jazz Series at Center Church and the American Place programming at West Middle School. We are confident that next year we will have a grand reopening of Main Street that incorporates a celebration of our 250th anniversary. We look forward to seeing you all there. So that's just a brief glimpse of our direction. I'd be happy to answer any questions now or at the end of Bridget's presentation. Again, let me thank you for your support, encourage you to approve the library budget as submitted by Mayor Bronin. Now, over to Bridget. And as I said, any questions now or at the end are fine. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you. It's so nice to see you all this evening. Before I start, I want to give a shout out to a few of my colleagues that are here behind me: Homa Nafasi, Letty Cotto, and Gilda Roncari from the senior team over at the library who are here in support. And I just want to give them a shout out for the fabulous work that they do. So thank you for being here. As David mentioned, we did just complete a strategic planning process. There are copies that were handed out to you, and we've also replicated that in the presentation. I won't go into too much detail here. It's meant as a high-level overview, but just to give you a sense of what we're looking at as far as the mission is to be that vital civic anchor here in the city of Hartford, and continue to inspire reading, guide learning, and encourage individual exploration. So as we go a little deeper into the plan, I've got my trusty assistant here. He just knows when to go forward. So the first goal is to really look at our services and to think about where we need to support and expand, where we need to build, where there may be particular constituencies or underserved populations, how to identify them, and then make sure that we're providing the level of service that is needed. To strengthen our ability to provide social services support, and to that end, we've actually just hired on a social worker who will be working with our staff and the public as that bridge between, providing information services and referrals to actually being able to help people make sure that they're connecting with the right agencies and entities for the services that are needed. People that come into the library looking for help usually don't just have one problem or one issue or one thing that they're dealing with. There's layers, and when we think about how to best support our community, having the services of somebody like a social worker to make sure that our residents are finding the resources that they need regardless of where they are is a huge part of what we need to do to be that community anchor. And we're also looking to develop better ways of assessing the effectiveness of our programs, making sure that we're really targeting and hitting the people that need them, as well as providing the very, very best quality that we can. The second goal is a continued focus on community and really elevating that as a major initiative to think about building better community engagement, not just looking to solicit feedback from the community when we're doing a long-range strategic plan, but on a regular basis saying, how are we doing? Are you satisfied? Is this what you need? Is it not? Where else can we be helpful, and how else can we do that? And getting that regular and systematic feedback so that we can continually adjust to the needs of the community. To enhance and expand our communications, it's always something I hear when I'm out in the community. It's like, oh, I had no idea you guys were doing that at the library. Or, hey, I hear this library is doing that. Are you guys doing it? So there's obviously a huge disconnect. So we want to make sure we're being much more effective in how we're delivering our message, and if it's landing with the people that need to hear it and want to hear it. And then to prioritize enabling our entire staff to be engage in the community and avail themselves of the opportunities that are here in the city, this wonderful city. The next one is outreach. We learned during the pandemic that meeting people where they are is really, really important. And we are looking to replace our aging and well-loved and well-used library on wheels with a larger van, a larger mobile unit that can go out in the community with even more services. We're also in the process of implementing book lockers, and I want to thank Councilman LeBrun for helping to move that forward. That is going to enable people to, even when the library is closed, to get access to materials that we can make available to them outside. It's going to be, we'll show you a picture in a little bit, it's going to be a really cool thing. And to increase access to all of our resources that are available electronically, to make sure we've got the virtual access as robust as possible. And goal 4, which is by no means meaning that it's the last one, it is actually probably the most important one, is continued investment in our staff. Really making sure that our employees have the opportunity to learn, to be skill trained, to find professional development that's meaningful to them, and that they have career and growth opportunities at the library. We have a fabulous staff, and we want to continue to encourage them and invest in them because they really are the ones that are delivering the services to our community. So as David mentioned, one of the silver linings, and you know, it's taken a while to actually feel like there are silver linings in what happened next door, but there definitely are silver linings. And one of them is the fact that the branch libraries are seeing usage that they haven't seen, you know, since I've been here, which is really fabulous. And it's giving people an opportunity to really see what is happening in the community. So we developed this little kind of hand card that we've started sending out saying, hey, come visit us in your neighborhood. These are all the locations. And Hopkins, as David mentioned, just reopened recently. We've had a soft opening for about a month, and now today is like the official ribbon cutting opening. But we're also back at West Middle School, and we're in a lot of different places in the community, but this has really given us a chance to elevate our branch services. We've expanded days of service and hours, and that is one of the things we're hoping to continue as we move into next budget year. If the allocation is as it is in the budget, we will be able to maintain expanded hours in the branch locations. Some of the highlights for the couple of the libraries, Park and Albany are our largest libraries, and they are now open on Saturdays, and Park is open on Sundays. At the Park Street, we have this fabulous entrepreneurial workshop for women that has been funded by the Hartford Foundation, and it's a wonderful resource for women to come together as they build their businesses and you know, get support from each other, but also have real help with questions that they might have about their small businesses. So it's been an incredible program on many, many levels. So that's one highlight for Park. And then Albany, what's been really great there is we've always had a lot of teens that come, young people that come to Albany after school, but now that we're able to have much more staff and resources down there, we can do so much more with virtual reality, augmented reality. Bracelet making and jewelry making is a huge craft down there that the students love. So they've done field trips to like Kineticon, the comic book thing, so it's just been a really nice thing to see the additional use at the branch locations. Here's a picture of the new Hopkins Library. If you haven't been there in a while, please stop by. It is now open. We replaced the carpet, it's new paint, new furniture, new window shades, and the big highlight there is that we now have an annex of the Hartford History Center. So we cleared out kind of that back corner and put in collapsible shelves because we now have the full print run of the Hartford Current and the Hartford Times, the run that we have the Hartford Times in that location. We've got archivists and research specialists there waiting to help the community. So a wonderful thing as we continue to move services that had been only available downtown out into the community and into the branches. That's a message we've heard from the community loud and clear. The American Place continues to be very strong, although it is definitely a challenge because they are operating out of so many different locations. But the key services continue, and a shout out to their staff for for being so dedicated and making sure that those services continue, even when we had to do them in many, many different places. Our current outreach services are quite robust as far as where the Library on Wheels goes. We have been doing many early learning center visits, and we've also reestablished the Leap Into Learning program, which is a home-based daycare support center that's funded by a private donor that we are hoping to expand. And the Library on Wheels continues to also fund support community collections, which are collections in different parts of the community that are just there for people to take, as well as support little free libraries. If they have them on their route, if they're looking a little low, we'll go and throw some stuff in there just so we make sure that there are books for the community in many, many different locations. Next door is still in a tough spot. It is, we are almost done with demo of the impacted areas, which really literally means that we are down to the framing and studs and beams in a lot of the areas. That main stairwell, the structure is still there, but everything is off of them. It is quite stark when you look at it. It's upsetting to see really the extent of the damage there. However, now that we've kind of turned the corner on the demolition of the impacted areas, we have turned our attention to the planning of the renovation. So we have architects engaged, and we're working with the staff, and we will do community engagement with this as well, to replan what those areas are going to look like. So it's a blank slate on the first floor to think about, okay, what should this look like? How do we want it to look and feel? We have this fabulous library. We're going to redesign it to be even more welcoming to the community than it had been in the past. For a timeline, I wish I had one to give you. We are hoping to be able to phase some services back in there by the fall, particularly for Yukon and perhaps some other areas that could be publicly accessible. But that main area, it's in all likelihood at least a year out before we will be opening those spaces again. We are in all of these different locations for temporary programming, and thank you so much to our community partners. As I'm sure you all know and see it every day, this is an incredibly generous community. Literally like the day after, like that Monday after the Christmas holiday, I was getting calls from people to say, how can we help? If you need places, if you need spaces, please let us know. And the community really, it was an outpouring of support with so many organizations offering to partner with us. These are, where we've got active programs happening. So thank you to the community for all they've done. We've got two other really exciting projects in the works. The first is the Albany branch project. As you know, hopefully, the city and its I think Vision has asked the library and given the library an opportunity to expand the Albany Branch Library, which was really needed. And what we will be doing is using the former Northwest Jones School. So that is going to be remediated and stabilized, and then we will be using that as again, a space for expanded library services and programs. There'll be a connector built between the two libraries, between that part and the current library, and the current library will also see some renovation. This is a very rough concept. It is by no means anywhere down the line as far as design. We will be doing, we needed something to be able to apply for some grants, but we will be doing community engagement there too to make sure that we are designing a building that is what the community wants. And we've already had quite a number of conversations, but knowing how much there's also already been talked about as far as the use of that former school as a cultural center, as an education center. So we want to honor what the community is looking for in this space and make sure that we are developing the plans appropriately. So that process will be starting soon. The other big capital project we have is the Barber Branch. And as you may know, we had for probably about 2 years, been planning a fit out to have that branch be located in the Swift factory. But when we really looked at the long-term impact of that on not only our budget, but as well as the opportunity for what the library could do, and this parcel became a potential parcel, the library board and Barbara Task Force thought that this would be a much better long-term investment for us to build a standalone library at 234 Barber Street, which is the former Snyder Supermarket. The city has already taken down that supermarket, so it is a lot ready to build. And we are now moving forward with adjusting the designs that we had to go to the Swift Factory to be a standalone location at 234 Barber. So we're very, very excited about that project as well. As I mentioned, this is one of those kind of new outreach projects that we're working on, which is the remote locker. So you can see it's kind of cool looking. We're looking to put it under by the Arch Street entrance so that we can make it, you know, it'd be undercover. It's still outside, but it's not subject to the elements. So what people could do is they could say, hey, I want to pick up this book, this material, this library of things item, and our staff will go put it in the locker, and it will be coded. So all you have to do is come up with your library card and either scan it or punch in your library card number or your access code. Pops open, you grab the book, it's already checked out to you, and Bob's your uncle, there you go. You can just walk away. And you know, it's nice because either with the library closed or if you just have a couple minutes, you can just pull up and grab your things and go. So it's a really nice way to support additional access. And we're using this as a test location. If it works well, I can see replicating this either at the library branches, or it doesn't have to be at a library branch. We did have an idea to have it at a commercial location, so if it works here, I think it'll be easier for us to try and get these all over the city, which would be a really nice addition. The Digital Library Lab, I know I've talked about this in years past, but I do want to just kind of remind you that we have it. And I also want to give a shout out to the city because we've been working with different departments about using this as a resource. So we are working with development services and other departments in the city to be good partners so that we can provide a service back for the service that we're enabled to give. So this is a nice library, another example of a nice library-city partnership. Usually you as a group are interested in hearing about e-resources. So I shout out to you guys for being very technologically advanced. So I wanted to give you just a snapshot because this has been an area of interest in the past of where we are with our e-resources. So we did a little summary for you, and you can see the one that's most used is BookFlix, and what's great about this is that that's a resource that's made available to our schools. We have this fabulous relationship with Hartford Public Schools. We call it Boundless is the name of the partnership, and it has a lot of different pieces to it, but one of them is that every Hartford Public School student is automatically a patron customer of the Hartford Library. They automatically have a library card. Their student ID is their library card number, so they have automatic access to all the resources of the Hartford Public Library, can check out materials. This BookFlix is a wonderful tool. It saw a huge uptick during the pandemic when students were home, but as you can see, even though they're back in the classroom, this is a resource that is really fabulous. So that, again, another way to show that we are leveraging the resources of the library to help support the schools and vice versa. Other e-resources, this slide represents things like e-books, e-audio, other recorded things that you can get in a downloadable way. We have two different platforms, Access 360 and Overdrive. Our numbers are pretty good. They spiked during the pandemic. They've come down a little bit now that people can get physical books back in their hands, but we have seen generally a growth in the use of e-resources. And those are all free. You don't have to have an Audible subscription. Just your library card means you have access to all of those resources. So now we're going to get into the numbers. Do you want to do it? Sure. Okay. I'm going to ask Carl to do the numbers.
Thank you, Bridget. What you'll see on this spreadsheet, or this slide, shows our ask for FY24. You'll see an increase in salaries about 6.3%. This represents negotiated increases as well as increase in hours at all of our locations, including Saturdays and nights. To go along with those salaries, you'll see an increase in fringe benefits. Obviously, the pension and Social Security and health go up when salaries go up. In the non-salary line items, It's a smaller amount of an increase of 41,000. This is more directly related to two things. First being our utility costs at our locations, specifically Park and Albany. Larger locations, we're seeing a larger increase in electricity and water. And we're also looking to increase the collection by about 10,000 this fiscal year as well, our collection ask. So overall, it's a 6.2% increase, about a $530,000 increase. You'll see 65% of our funding from the city goes towards salaries, 28% with fringe benefits, and the rest in non-salary line items. This is a breakout of where those funds are spent. 72% of it is spent on public services, and you'll see the rest with facilities, IT, development, administration, human resources, and finance. This is a slide that shows the city's contribution throughout the past fiscal years with obviously an increase every year, which has been terrific, and it has been a huge help for us. And what you also see on the bottom graph is the percentage of the city of Hartford's contribution as compared to the total library budget, meaning that while the city of Hartford is putting in giving more funding each year, so is Hartford Public Library in terms of grants, endowment, donations. We're increasing our contribution for our operating budget as well. You want to take this one? Yeah.
This is the kind of humble brag, right? We like to look at our peers in other cities in the state to see how we're doing, to make sure, you know, we're aligned, but also just to kind of, I don't know, brag. Yeah. It is what it is. Those are all fabulous libraries, and I think the world of our colleagues in other cities in the state, but I thought it would be interesting to show you, because sometimes, you know, if you only see what's happening here in Hartford, you don't know how it compares to other libraries. But as programming and even as visits, and our visits are still down, you know, full disclosure, our visits are still down from pre-pandemic. Part of that is because we didn't open up all of our sites. Now it is certainly because downtown is closed. But even so, for fiscal year 22, we absolutely set the high bar for the number of programs that are offered, both live and virtual, as well as the number of visits and program attendance across the entire, you know, range of libraries in the state, or urban libraries, larger urban libraries in the state. HPL demographics, this is often a question too we have as part of the council meeting, the presentation, asking about the makeup of our employee base. So right now we have 144 employees. That does obviously fluctuate based on, some of them are grant funded, some of them are, you know, we do have attrition and new hiring. Average age is 42. Definitely more female than male. That's kind of typical in libraries, although we're seeing an uptick in that male percentage. And then ethnicity, we are our community's library, and I think reflect that we are a diverse city and really strive to hire from the community and people that represent, you know, the people that we serve. So we want people from the community to feel like this is not only a place for them to go, but also a place for them to work. Our Hartford residency, we have almost 30%, 27.8% are Hartford residents, and the other are non-Hartford residents. And what I like to show too is that, you know, all of this is completely transparent. We are very open as far as anybody that can look at our books. We are on the city's checkbook Hartford, so any expenditures are on there. We also post everything publicly on our website, our 990s, the financial reports. We have the board information, the CEO reports. So, you know, anything that a resident would want to know about our financial situation is available, and if there's any questions, between Carl and Mary and everybody else on our team, we do our very best to make sure people feel good about the stewardship that we are, leading for, and that is what the board does, you know, to make sure we're good stewards of the investment that you and the taxpayers of Hartford make in us. The last slide, or second to last slide, is just a listing of the awards and grants we've received, and I put that on there because, again, this is a very special library system, and it has been for decades. And I know you were all library supporters, and I appreciate that so much, but I also just want to remind you that this really is a very special library. It is perhaps, you know, it is a leading library in the country. We're small, but we're mighty, and we hold our own against, you know, big, huge library systems as far as the services we provide, as well as the acknowledgement and the awards that we receive. So we're definitely punching above our weight. And part of our ability to do that is the support that you, as the council, give to us and enable us to do on behalf of the residents of the city. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and again, thank you for the support that you've showed to the Hartford Public Library.
Thank you for your presentation. So I have a couple of questions. The Park Street Library.
Yep.
Bear with me. Okay. So if I look at this and I see here where it says that on Park Street, with the support of the endowment fund for the Hartford Public Giving Grant, you have Mujeres Emprendedoras project that started in July that offer a variety of programs focused on entrepreneurship and handmade goods, and they're all in Spanish. How many programs do you have? I see a sewing class on here.
How many programs do we have at Park Street? There are programs every day.
No, how many? I know they have programs every day, but is it the same program offered every day? When I look at the Albany Library, I see popular bracelet making, the virtual reality program. Is that something that you offer in Park Street?
We offer, yeah, well, that one, we don't have a U-Media at Park Street, so we do have a range of different programs at each location. There's a full calendar of all of that on our website. I'd be happy to get you information about that. Off the top of my head, there's so many that are offered, I couldn't even begin to tell you. But every day there are different programs for all ages of people at every location. The Park Street Library has seen tremendous usage since its opening. That program room, I think, is booked almost every day. So, I mean, I'd be happy to provide you a list of all the different programs that are being held at all the locations, if that's of interest. I mean, what we put in here literally was like a tiny little snapshot of, you know, a couple to highlight, but there are a huge array and variety of programs available.
And how about immigration services? Is there a high volume of immigration services there?
Most of the immigration service, and actually Homa's here, I mean, I think we're doing most of those out of West Middle, correct?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
It depends on the nature of their question, their need, but if it's a citizenship application form or a green card renewal, or they've lost their naturalization certificate, no matter what branch they go to, we have a system where they meet with a counselor and we assist them over here. We collect their documents actually over here in the Department of Civic Engagement, and then we counsel them and work through their paperwork in an office at UConn or at West Middle.
Thank you. Marilyn? Councilwoman Rossetti?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you. I have to start with first, just to, like people have to let people know. I am a corporator of the library, so we don't want to, have anybody say anything later. And it's okay to brag. That's the other thing. Before I ask the question, I told one of my best friends, her uncle is Mr. Snyder, and she's a teacher, and she's really very happy and excited that this is happening. So thank you. The Albany branch, yes, very rudimentary, but nice. Yeah. First of all, I know you work on a community engagement. How are you going to do it at that particular branch, and how and if will you have a relationship with the Artist Collective?
Oh, Excellent. So, so glad you mentioned the Artist Collective. So, what we envision is a campus there for arts, education, culture, everything that we can leverage from the organizations that are in that area. So would welcome an opportunity to work more closely with the Artist Collective, and to that extent too, they are one of those organizations that has really come through for us during the downtown event. Our final jazz series program, Baby Grand Jazz, will be held at the Artist Collective on April 30th. So we're really happy to see that starting in a more real way where we can come together as collaborative partners. The community engagement that will happen for the Albany Branch Library will be part of the design process. So in the coming months, we will be scheduling times at the Albany Library to bring the community together to think about what they want to see in their library. It's a very similar process to what we did for the new Barber Library, but with, but completely with the focus. So there will be focus groups, there will be small group meetings, there will be access to the design professionals with community residents, with the NRZ, so that we make sure that as we go along, it's not just a one and done. It's as we are going through the design process, we're going back to the community to say, hey, this is what we've got, this is how we're looking to move forward. So we haven't started that yet. We've had some informal conversations over the last year or so just to say, hey, this is coming down the pike, what do you think? Just to make sure we're not losing anything that had been spoken about as a potential role for the Northwest Jones School, and how we can make sure to honor all of the different plans that the community has had for that space over the years.
Okay, thank you. And I know, I apologize, we're not corporators any longer.
Yes.
We're ambassadors.
You're ambassadors.
So, thank you, Council President. Thank you.
Could you please close your PowerPoint presentation so I can see the screen? I can't tell if Councilwoman Hercules. Okay. I'm going to call. You have the floor, Councilwoman Hercules.
Thank you, Madam President. You had clicked out for a second, so I wasn't sure. Thank you so much, Ms. Quinn and team, for the great presentation, and of course, all the wonderful work that you do at the library. Definitely a huge fan. Can't say it enough. Just had a couple of quick questions. You may have addressed this, but I might have missed it. With respect to the original plans at Swift, I wasn't sure if the Albany Ave expansion was the pivot of that, that location, which was prospective to be at the Swift factory, or if there are still plans to put a library in that neighborhood. So I apologize if I missed that part of it.
No, good question. No, they're two separate and distinct projects. So we will be doing the expansion of Albany, but we will also be building a new standalone library on Barber Street.
Thank you, thank you. I may have missed that. And then the only other question I had, and certainly the flood is something that nobody could have anticipated. If there can be any silver lining when a disaster happens is what we learn afterwards and the changes we can make. So I'm just curious, I did read your article that you wrote in the Hartford Business Journal about the policy covering all of the loss and damage. Wanted to know if, in light of that, there have been any changes to the policy, and what structural or infrastructure changes are maybe anticipated with the rebuild of the library downtown.
Yeah, no, that is, that's a very, astute observation. Is absolutely, we've got to look at that. We have pretty robust coverage with our insurance, and actually the insurance that's provided is through the City of Hartford. So we've been working very closely with your risk manager to assess, was it appropriate? So I think that is going to be an ongoing discussion with Sarah and the team as far as where we go from here for future events. But what we have learned, particularly for this building, is to make sure that we have redundancy, more redundancy in some of the reporting, like kind of the reporting products that are available now that weren't when that was built. So the building maintenance system, making sure that we've got really up-to-date software that is that is reporting out if there are concerns. So water monitoring, moisture monitoring, the kinds of things that we may have thought we had, but we didn't. So to make sure that we've got the appropriate systems, and this is that opportunity to get the most up-to-date building mechanicals, monitoring systems, reporting systems, making sure that the reports are going to the right people, how they're being addressed. So yeah, absolutely, this has been a huge learning opportunity for us with our facilities planning to make sure we've got the right equipment, the right monitoring systems, and the right people in place to do that monitoring for us, and that might include having a third-party monitoring system rather than relying just on internal staff just for that extra level of protection. But as far as the insurance goes, we've been working with Travelers. They are our coverage, and it's a long slog. It is very detailed, and we are working it through with them. But we do anticipate that they will be covering what is needed to do the replace and restore. Then as far as the larger projects, since we are going to be under renovation, we're going to use this as an opportunity to say, okay, what does the rest of it need to look like, and how we're going to make sure that this is the best library possible. So that will be above and beyond what the insurance covers. Right now, we're close to figuring out what those estimates will look like, and I will have those numbers probably within the next few weeks.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Councilman Nick LeBron?
Hello. I love the library. First, I want to apologize for my overdue books. I'm sorry.
We do automatic renewals now, so
I
we're
know.
all good.
I know that you guys make it easy. So, I reflect, and I say that because the library is representative, at least to me and my family, of the good things that the city of Hartford provides for our communities. There's nothing better, and I think I shared this with you, Ms. Quinn, Director Quinn, in that there's nothing better than leaving with a library book, right? A brand new library book, and bringing that home. And it just reminds me of my youth. And how important that was, and how my mother was very influential and promoted reading through the use of our libraries. So the other thing I want to mention is that my friend Chris Brown always talks about the libraries as the poor people's university, and I believe that that is now the case more than ever, right? We need these libraries to represent academics in the way that can be tangible, or that folks that aren't able to have access to college or college classes or knowledge content outside of the traditional mechanisms, but still have the availability to learn. And so the questions that I have today are really spirited on how much I believe the libraries are important to our community. So going back to the Barber Street Library, on March 8th of last year, there was a big launch at the Swift Factory, and the mayor did his State of the City address at the Swift Factory, highlighting the fact that we were going to open a library there. I remember distinctly there was like library shelves behind him, and I'm a fan of more libraries, so I'm not saying take away the one from Barber Street and move it at Swift. I'm saying let's do both, right? And so the question I have, I believe you mentioned that we're doing the Barber Street Library because of it's a better financial plan, but we're building a structure there, whereas the Swift Factory already exists. So if we're going to the brick and mortar concept, and we have a brick and mortar established, can you kind of walk me through as to how the financial sustainability piece is more pertinent on Barber Street than at the Swift Factory?
Sure. So at the Swift Factory, we were looking at entering in a lease with Community Solutions, and that lease was very, it was a substantial amount of money, and we were looking at either a 10-year or 20-year term. So moving away from a leased space situation, which is really like we did at Park Street, moved away from a leased space into a new building, similarly to Barber Street, moved away from a leased space. Our initial hope was to move into a, you know, a non-leased space. When the SWIFT opportunity came up, we decided to pursue that after the task force looked at many other sites, thinking that that would be a way to get us into a space more quickly and more cost effectively. But when we really dove down into the details, the long-term costs of the lease were going to be similar to what they would have been in a standalone facility, or actually more. So for the you know, post 10, 20 years of sustainability for the library in that neighborhood, having a city-owned standalone building will ensure a more cost-effective opportunity for the library and the city over time, because that lease cost would just continue to grow quite a bit in that rented facility. And if we decided to go, you know, we would have been investing not only the capital to do the fit out, but also then the lease cost, which if we take that investment and put it to a new space long term, it is a better financial investment for the city.
Long term. The other question and through you, Madam President, the other question I want to ask is that I know that it's by which school, but we also have two schools that are shut down there, Clark and so Waverly and Clark schools,
Yes.
which are structures that currently exist. Was there any discussion about opening a library in a structure that already existed?
Yeah, so we did talk about the Clark School, which the challenge there is, I'm sure you all know more than me, is the contamination of that site. So between the costs and I think the concerns we heard from, you know, people in the community about having a library on that site, that was one that we didn't pursue. And then the Waverly School we did actually talk about as a task force, but because of where it's located, it's a little off the beaten path, not as central as Barber Street is. And so we didn't take a lot of time to pursue that with the task force, and really looking to prioritize staying as close to Barber Street as possible.
Through you, Madam Chair. So first of all, thank you. So I think it's the structure that's going, or what is it called again behind the downtown library? What is it called? The locker.
Oh, the remote locker.
It's what is it called?
It's a remote locker.
Remote locker.
Yes.
That's what we glowingly call inside here as the robot. But I'm just so happy to see it, and it's going to be in blue and green. So just one last thing in regards to Laurel Street. I live on Laurel Street. One of the locations of the Library on Wheels states that it goes to CRT on Laurel. So the CRT on Laurel is closed, and I don't see the Library on Wheels there. Is that just a typographical error, or because it's right across? I live right across the street from there, so I would love a Library on Wheels there, but I don't see it. So I don't know if that's just an oversight listed, but I've never seen the Library on Wheels.
I'm looking at Letty because I.
The Library on Wheels goes to as many CRT daycares. When they reach out to us, we're there. And Laurel Street may have been one of the locations that we've gone to. The Library on Wheels is everywhere throughout the city. CRT is a big partner, and a lot of the spaces also where they go to when it comes to the community collections. And this was part of the report that we submitted based on that locker, that remote locker, and the research that we did, that a lot of the collections are in the north end of Hartford, a lot of the small community collections. So the Library on Wheels, although it's going everywhere in the city of Hartford, it's also prioritizing spaces and agencies where we know there's a higher number of underrepresented communities. So with the Laurel Street, that's a space that we used to go to, and I'm pretty sure we're everywhere where CRT calls us.
Yeah, so maybe just on the presentation, just say all CRT locations.
Yeah.
Because I got excited, and then I went on the website, and I didn't see it, and I'm like, am I missing it? Is it because I'm at work or something? I would love Library on Wheels. Again, I'm a huge fan of what the library does for our committee. And so for our community. Lastly, the little libraries. How does that partnership work? Is that an initiative that is designated by the library itself, or does a community person build a little library and then you guys support it? Can you kind of go through that process?
Sure. So there is definitely a difference between what we call community collections and little free libraries. So community collections are collections in the community of books for people to take that the library sets up and coordinates and works with different entities, whether or not they're laundromats or different places in the city. Little free libraries, anybody can build a little free library and put it outside their house or their business. But there is a network of, when you, like Little Free Library is you register to be one, and then you're part of a national kind of, movement, and then your Little Free Library is on a map. So we know where they all are, and so what our outreach team does is they will go, past them and say, if they look empty, we'll stick some stuff in there. So that is really, it's pretty informal. I think that the owners do know when we're coming to do it, and we do some more regularly than others, either if it's on the route or we know that that's a high traffic point. But those are much more informal. The community collections are the ones that we coordinate ourselves.
So the bottom line is, if I was to build it, you will come?
You got it.
All right. That's all my questions, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Bridget, thank you so very much. David, thank you for being here. The library, I believe, as you said, is a place for you. It's a place for us. I truly do believe that in our community. Couple things I want to touch on, and that is the Barber Street Library. I know there was a lot of community groups who came together. They wanted a new library for Barber Street. They accepted the Swift Factory because just wanted a new library. But when the opportunity came to build a library on Barber Street, I think the community groups were more happy to see that. One of the response to me is that this is not the library of the old, where I go and borrow a book and read a book and turn the pages. So that was how they described this library on Barber Street to be. Could you give us a little bit more information, because that's what I was told?
Sure, no, absolutely. So we had done quite a bit of community engagement for that already, but we're going to go back because now that we have this new opportunity, just to make sure that what we're designing is what the community wants. But what we have envisioned in there is an adult learning center, which we're calling the Next Gen Center. So that is a place for adult learning, adult literacy, digital inclusion, technology training, career training, GED, pre-GED, adult literacy initiatives. And that will be classrooms and study rooms and facilitated coursework. So really an expansion of what we're currently doing at the American Place, but really focused on the needs of that particular community. We already do quite a bit of certificate training, and we do Cisco training, we do Guard Card, we do ServSafe, we do driver's ed, actually is out of Park Street. So an expansion of all those kinds of hands-on programs and services and certifications that people want. A lot of technology. What we had talked about too, and we'll need to reassess this, but if it's feasible and if it's what the community wants to, we were looking at simulation type services in collaboration with the industries and higher education, like community college as well as Goodwin and UConn, to think about how we can partner and create that bridge for people that may be interested in going into the field, but the barrier may seem a little high, right? Like you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on courses that may or may not be what you're looking for. So we're looking at creating that kind of on-ramp and giving people an example, some hands-on experience to get in there, to see if it really resonates with them, if they like it, if they have the aptitude, and to connect with how to take that further. So it's kind of like a U Media for adults, really, where they're getting practical skill-based training for those kinds of things that could then lead into a career or to help direct them into the educational opportunities. So that's one piece of it. The rest is a library, but a library in Hartford is different than a library in some other places. It is a really robust community engagement place for culture, for education, for literacy. So expanded youth programs, teen programs. We're going to do a food pantry there, so building out an actual space. They're doing a lot of food work there, where there are, even today, they were at the Barber Street, they work with Connecticut Food Share to make sure that there's distributions to the community. So we're building a bigger pantry at that location to be able to do more fresh produce and other resources and other products there for people to have in the community. So those are just a few examples of the kind of special things that we will have there that we've heard that either our current branch staff has said, listen, this is a huge need and we're doing it in this way, but we need to do it in this way so that we can expand that. And then also make sure it's just a gathering space that people in the community know it's their space. And they can use it like people do Park Street for community events, for personal events, for music, culture, art. So the whole range of things that the community wants.
So the definition of it's not the library of the old anymore.
No.
It's a new way.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great idea because one of the things the community did say is that having the library in Barber Street fits in their strategic plan for the neighborhood. So there was a great partnership with the community and the library. So it's great to see. And of course, I'm going to be prejudiced regarding my neighborhood library in Upper Albany. I'm dying to find out when is this going to come online. The building is sitting there waiting. I know there was a lot of, focus group. It was, it wasn't really, I attended a few of them, and it was informal, absolutely.
Yep.
But I think you got a flavor of what the community was looking for. And it's great to see the connection between the actual library that's there and, a clear path over to the Northwest Jones building. That library is certainly in need. I think when the library in Blue Hills was closed, there was a certain influx of, so that library is serving a lot of different community right now. So I'm just dying to find out what is the timeline on when that will come aboard.
So the first phase is to do the remediation and stabilization of the Northwest Jones School. And that work, I'm hoping will commence soon, that the Development, what is it?
Which one?
Development Services, thank you, are leading that, and we're working in partnership with them. So they already have, that project well underway planning-wise. So when it can commence, we're working closely with Aaron and Charles and their team to get that date set. But that is moving, absolutely, that's moving along. So once that's set, simultaneously while that work is happening, we're going to be doing the design work, so that once the design work is done, we're hopeful that the remediation stabilization is done, we can go out to bid and start the work on the actual project.
Great. And I just want to, put a plug in for the Johnny Rogers Cultural Center.
Yes.
I think that's something the community, 20, 30 years ago was going to use that building for a sort of a cultural center, museum, tying it in with the Artist Collective and the library. So this really partnership and became a great opportunity to actually make that work. And so looking at Barber Street also, we're talking about 2 years out, 3 years out?
Hopefully not 3. It's hard to tell right now, but we are, we've got a meeting scheduled next week to start that redesign. We were waiting to make sure that that parcel was really going to be ours to use, and we have that now. So the design team is coming back together to restart that process next week. I'm hesitant to put dates on the table just because I don't want to disappoint you. But as soon as we have a schedule, I should know more in the next couple of weeks what that schedule might look like, and I will definitely share it with all of you.
Okay, great. One of the things, looking at the budget, I think it listed as about 144 employees. How many of that is grant funded?
About 25 of those employees are grant funded.
About 25 employees?
About 25, yeah.
So predominantly, the remaining
It obviously fluctuates each year depending on the grant, but usually ranges from, anywhere from 20 to 40, really. But this year, right now, as of today, about 25.
Okay. And I'm really happy to see that the mayor has included a little bit additional funds in your budget this year. It looks like maybe, a couple $100,000. So, I know after the flood and getting employees out to the different, branch libraries, I will tell you that we hope we could keep them there. I'm going to be very honest with you. The staffing that are at the branch library, they're doing such a fabulous job. It's totally unbelievable, and I think the community is going to be not too happy. I'm going to be happy to get the building downtown back again, but to get that staff, if we could keep those staff in the branch libraries, I think all the branch libraries are really enjoying the additional staff and the additional programs that the staff has been doing. So thank you so very much for that. A bad situation happened, but some good came out of it. I don't really think the community knew how much staff there was at the library because they're so used to seeing, the few was in the library, and now there was like so many people, and they were like, can we keep them? And that's what I was asked when we did Library Week a couple weeks ago. They were asking, are they going to stay? So I just want to thank you for your service. David, I want to thank you for your service being on the library board. I know how it's a lot of work. So thank you so very much for doing this on behalf of the residents of the city.
Councilman Milka Hernandez.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the visuals. I love the graphs. It helps me digest, the information much quicker. So question, just thinking about the long-term sustainability of your programming, not just beyond this year. City of Hartford covers just above 71% of your total budget. Then the remaining 29% comes from grants, endowments, or private funding. Are any of those considered like one-time funding sources, or what is basically another way of looking at the question is what's the likelihood of receiving those funding? What is your, how do you rate the likelihood of receiving those fundings?
As far as that 29%, really, I guess you would consider the grants to be more of a one-time funding. We traditionally budget about $1 million a year in grants. Now those are obviously restricted funds. But over the past, I would say 7 years, we have seen closer to $2 million each year come through in grants, either through federal or state or non-governmental entities, really mostly non-governmental entities. Now, the rest of the funding, you mentioned endowment, donations. Endowment is, we do a draw from our endowment each year. It's about 4% of a 12-quarter rolling average, to be technical about it. And the rest of it is from donations, and we every year have seen an increase in donations. So that's how we're looking right now. But in answer to your question, I would think grants are more of can be considered a one-time. However, we're continually receiving grants each year.
Thank you. And my second and last question, going to this page of the bragging page, I will call it now, right? So do you have the numbers for that same category of what it was pre-COVID years how does this number compare to pre-COVID years?
So the, so that is both in-person and virtual. So when we had to go to all virtual, we obviously saw a little dip, but as our staff became more proficient with offering virtual programming, we did see a pretty consistent leveling of people that were attending. We're not back to our pre-COVID levels, and I'd be happy to share the numbers with you. But we're getting there. I mean, it's particularly for program. If we looked at door count, it'd be quite a bit down because of what's been happening next door, as well as we didn't bring all of the branches back to full hours. Right away we scaled them in. So our numbers are still down comparative to pre-pandemic. Program attendance and the number of programs are not quite back up there, but they're getting close. But I'd be happy to share that with you, and I can share previous years of the comparison between our sister libraries.
Yeah, and I do see on your key performance indicator, measures, I see the library visits, in 2020 were in the 500-something thousand. Then it kind of obviously went down, but it's kind of going up, so I can see that the trend it's going up.
Yes.
And obviously we don't have any projections because of the the incident here at the downtown branch. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman Gale?
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening. Picking up on the last question, I was actually looking at the very same page in the book we have with all this data. I'm not understanding when it says collections, what do those numbers represent?
Is it the number of physical collection, or is it circulation?
I'm sorry.
That we're looking at?
So this graph, this chart rather, it's entitled collections, and then it's number of adult print material, number of young adult print material, number of juvenile print material, and like the adult print material indicates 114,000 in fiscal year 20 and 68,000 in this current year.
Yep. So that represents actual physical items of collections. So that is like one book. So they're not all books, but that is that representation. So when we were closed for COVID, we used that as an opportunity to do a mass kind of cleanup of our collections and weeded out a number of things. And now we are rebuilding our collections so that they're more current and more usable, and so that's why that differential was in those collection numbers. We also moved a pretty significant collection size-wise of musical scores that were at the library but were not being used, so now they're housed at a different library. We actually have an agreement with the Queens Library because they have a huge musical score collection, so they have a much better way of protecting and making available musical scores. So those numbers reflect actual physical items, but those are two examples of why that number is so different over the last couple of years.
Thank you. You mentioned your scanning capability in your digital lab, and I would just note that the Hartford Public High School yearbook collection, which dates back to the mid-1800s, has engaged the library and actually paid money to have you scan those yearbooks. And that's part of the rich history that the city has and that some of its schools have. So I don't know long-term that this would necessarily be appropriate for the Northwest School building, but I would throw out there that, and I'm sure you're aware of it, but Hartford Public High School, for instance, has a small museum in the high school. That museum probably should be housed somewhere else, somewhere where it's potentially accessible to people. It's not terribly accessible in the school. And I note, we have the Hartford History Collection. I've heard Councilwoman Surgeon talk about the Cultural Center. So there's a number of elements that potentially could come together to become a sort of a Hartford History Museum, if you will. Something to think about as a potential use for the building or some other facility later on. So that's all I have, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you.
They could skip scanning my yearbook picture. They could skip that page.
No, it's there, Councilman.
It's there already?
It's there.
Okay, I got it.
I'll take money, though.
Well, now it lives on the Connecticut Digital Library, you know, the CTDOL, so sorry, it's out there.
Hi. So I'm looking at your presentation here on page 20 where you have your FY24 budget, which 65% of your budget is salaries, 28 is fringe, 7% is OTPS. What does that stand for?
Other than personnel services.
Okay. And when I look at your demographics, you have 144 employees. How many employees are you budgeted for? How many vacant jobs do you have open?
The total in the budget is about 120, 119, about that we see in this budget. And then, like I said, the rest is grants. So my estimate was about 25 of those employees of the 144 were grants.
Okay, so when I look at the demographics, you have 6.2% Asian, 20.8% Black, 33.3% Caucasian, 29.8% Hispanics, and then other 9.9. Out of that, 27% are Hartford residents and 72% are non-Hartford residents. Do you get a lot of applications from Hartford residents?
Applications, you know what, I would need to get back to you on that. I don't know how we're counting as far as the applicants. We do, when we're going out to recruit, we post, all of our positions are posted on our website, but we also use Indeed as our recruitment tool, as well as, you know, local recruitment as far as different agencies where we'll promote the jobs that are available. I'm not sure if we collect that or if we do what that number is, but I can certainly look it up. I can look into it.
Okay, so besides Indeed and the website, you do have, you post jobs like in local newspapers so that Hartford residents that are not familiar with Indeed can apply?
So we don't really advertise in newspapers anymore. Indeed is a pretty standard place for people. So if people are coming in to look for work, what we generally do is, you know, when they come in as job seekers for us, right, with us, we work with the Connecticut Workforce Partners, and the first thing that they do is help them find the places to do recruitment. That is a huge issue for people, right, if they don't have the technology skills. So there's one thing that we have also really focused on is thinking about how to make it easy for people to find the jobs and to apply for them, because it requires a certain level of technological expertise even to apply for a job, which you see at Stop and Shop, you see everywhere, right? So yes, we do use online recruitment for our positions, which is pretty typical, you know, of most employers. But what we also are looking to do, we're in the process of recruiting for a new HR director, and one of the things that came up as a suggestion from one of the candidates is to set up an actual kiosk in our libraries,
Right.
where people can come in and see the jobs that are available at the library and apply for them right on the spot, which honestly I thought was a fabulous idea, and I'm looking to get that done as soon as we possibly can, because there is a disconnect. So yes, I mean, that we definitely have improvements we can make in making sure that people are finding the jobs that are available and connecting them. A lot of it happens also word of mouth. If there's a position available in the branches, our branch staff are often looking, you know, at recruiting and talking to the people that are coming into the branch and encouraging them to apply. We've also been really focused on looking to our internal talent and helping people move into different positions in the organization depending on where they want to be, and helping them get there through tuition reimbursement, professional development, which is paid, other skill-based training. So we have different ways of looking at recruiting to make sure that we're filling the vacancies. it has been challenging. You know, there's been a lot of, it's getting better, but post-pandemic recruitment has been really challenging to get enough applicants and to get applicants that are able to, you know, meet the qualifications. And for those that aren't, how do we get them there? You know, how do we provide that kind of training? Do we have the capacity to be able to do that? And if not, how can we get there to make sure we're getting, you know, a really broad and diverse number of applicants in our pool? Because the best, you know, the best people at the library branches really are those people that know the community, whether or not because they've been working there for a really long time or because they're from the community, but there certainly is a huge benefit to having people in those branch locations and even downtown that know their neighbors, right? And can be a friendly face for their neighbors when they come in.
Thank you, and we love our library. Follow-up questions? Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, and we'll go backwards. Go ahead.
So, just to follow up on that wonderful idea with the kiosk, is it possible to expand that to all the City of Hartford job openings and not just the library? We can always use, we have a bunch of empty positions, or open positions, not empty, sorry, open positions. And by utilizing that as an access point, I think would be fantastic.
Good idea.
And I'm also seeing, you know, that a lot of companies are coming up with QR codes that they can scan, and it goes right to the job openings and the application if they want to apply, right? We want to be user-friendly. Councilwoman Rossetti, or, yes, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Surgeon.
I totally forgot, is to congratulate you and your staff in all the great awards I see in your presentation for 2022. I can honestly see why on your graph, Hartford, you know, outdo the other cities and towns. So I just want to congratulate your staff here with you and the amazing job they have done. And thank you. I do love more than anything the American Place. It is a fabulous application for a lot of the immigrants that comes in from other country that lives in Hartford. So I just want to thank you guys for that. It's well known, believe it or not. It's really well known in the community. So I just want to say thank you to the staff and congratulations on all the awards you've received.
Councilman Hernandez, did you have another question before we end this?
One quick question, just in the spirit of supporting your efforts, out of the 119 positions that are paid by the City of Hartford, how many are vacant right now?
I don't know the exact. A bunch. I'll have to send you the exact number.
Sure.
I could guess, but it's 15 to 20 right now. We'll send you the exact number.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah, and can you send that to all city council, please? Okay, that concludes your presentation, Bridget and staff. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And now we will take a 5-minute break, and then we will have HPD come up and present. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. This is our second presentation today at our OMBGA departmental budget hearing. And now we have our great team of the Hartford Police Department. And once again, I have to my right, Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti. Chief, our new council member, Amilca Hernandez. And to my left, I have Councilman John Gale. Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon stepped out for a minute. And we also have Councilman LeBron in the room. And Chief, Councilwoman Tana Hercules on the screen. And Chief, I'm going to hand over the floor so that you can introduce your team and then start your presentation.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Good to see everybody. To my far left is Assistant Chief Kenny Howell, Assistant Chief of Police, overseeing both the administration, professional standards, and the operations side of the police department. To my immediate left, Pam Mendez. She oversees our budget from the police department side of it, our fiscal division. And to my right is Lieutenant Laura Trzynski, my commander of planning and accreditation as well. And I am Jason Thody, Chief of Police. Thanks.
Welcome, Chief and staff.
You want me to just go ahead, or you want me to wait?
Go right ahead.
Go right ahead, okay. All right, so we'll skip to the first slide here. I won't read from all these slides, but this is our mission statement. The mission of the Hartford Police Department is to keep Hartford residents safe by responding to and investigating crimes, by reducing crime, and by forging strong relationships between police officers of all ranks with the communities that we serve. Building a police force that reflects the diversity of Hartford is part of the department's commitment to serve and represent our community. The department strives to fulfill its obligations while maintaining the highest professional and ethical standards. Next slide is probably a little, it's not too bad. As I said, it's probably a little tough to see, but this is our organizational chart. At the top, myself and Assistant Chief Howell. As you look down, the top two subsections are the Investigative Services Bureau and the Community Services Bureau. The next one down is Patrol Services. So those three encompass the operations side of the department. So in the Detective Division or Investigative Services, you have crime scene, special investigations, major crimes, C4 or Intelligence Division, and Vice Intelligence and Narcotics. Those are our investigative bureaus. Community Services Bureau are divided into North and South. That's where our community service officers are. Our Animal Control, Canine Unit, Special Teams, Traffic Division, Special Events, and our Street Crimes Units. And then Patrol Services is Patrol Operations, which are the men and women that are out there answering calls for service, our Detention Division, and our Teleserve Division. On the bottom two sections is Administration and Professional Standards. Under Administration, we have our Fleet, our Fiscal Division, Court Support Services, our Technology Division, our Property Room, Records, Crime Analysis, Collect NCIC compliance, our Critical Infrastructure, and our IT. Professional Standards is our Police Academy, Planning and Accreditation, Civil Litigation and FOI, Internal Affairs, Career Development, Recruitment, Backgrounds, Personnel, PAL Cadets and Explorers, and our OSHA Compliance. Getting into some of our highlights, our current staffing is 379 sworn officers. That is 93 below our target number, which is 472. This is a net increase of 6 officers since this time last year. Our resignations and retirements have slowed. So just as an example, last fiscal year, we lost 48 officers. This fiscal year so far, with only a couple months remaining, we've only lost 16. So we're down from 48 that left the year before to only 16 so far this year. Recruitment and hiring is still challenging given the vacancies that we have. It's hard to get folks in. You'll see that as we go over on the next slide, our academy classes and what the numbers have been in those classes. So retention and recruitment continues to be a challenge. Our necessity to have people work overtime to cover unfilled positions presents challenges for us. And the department's minority staffing level is currently 35.88%. This is an increase of 3% since last year at this time when I gave this presentation, and 15% of our sworn officers are female. So combined, when you combine, oh, sorry, that's the next slide. Our hiring information. Top two sections we just talked about. Our last academy class that graduated in December of 2022, we had 22 recruits. This is one of the larger classes that we've had in the recent past. 2 of those recruits are Hartford residents. 68% of the class was racial and ethnic minority, and 8% of the class was female recruits. So when you combine racial and ethnic minority with females, we were at 73% for that class. That was a very good class. The academy class, here in this slide, it said anticipated start date of April 3rd. It did in fact start on April 3rd. We only had 12 recruits in that class. 2 of the recruits are Hartford residents. 50% of the class was racial and ethnic minorities, and 17% of the class was female. So combined, that class was 67% female and racial and ethnic minority. Onto our crime data. This, early in the year, this fluctuates quite a bit. So our most up-to-date crime data is on the website in our CompStat packages. I would encourage anyone that's interested to look there. So for calendar year 2022, we actually ended at a 0% increase, which I've never seen before. So it was static across 2021 to 2022. But within those categories, we had a 15% increase in homicides, 39 compared to 34 the year before. We had a 29% decrease in rape, a 37% increase in robbery, a 10% decrease in aggravated assaults, a 38% increase in burglary, a 1% increase in larceny, and a 21% decrease in auto theft that we'll talk a little bit more about when we get to the Auto Theft Task Force. So far for 2023, we're down year to date by 15%. This slide is 14, but it's actually 15. We're at a 56% decrease in homicides. We are at 5 this year compared to 11 for this week, the same week last year. 30% increase in rape, 14% increase in robbery, 33% decrease in aggravated assault, an 8% decrease in burglary, and a 31% decrease in larceny. 65% increase in auto theft is one of our most challenging categories right now so far this year. That is almost entirely due to the Hyundai and Kia issue, where they can be started. I'm sure people have seen this on the news. They can be started with a USB. And so of our citywide 249 stolen cars, 102 of them, or 41%, are the Kias and Hyundais. This is something that we're not just seeing here in Hartford, but we're seeing that across the region as well. Last year, Kia didn't even make the top 10 list for makes of cars that were stolen, and now it is among the top. We're also seeing an increase in juvenile offenders in 2023 compared to previous years. Again, this USB starting these Hyundais and Kias has gone viral on TikTok, which has resulted in these stolen cars being stolen by younger folks. So we have seen that in the statistics as well. Currently, 46.7% of our Hartford arrests for auto theft are under 17 years old this year. So that is another change this year from last year. Again, with our Greater Hartford Regional Auto Theft Task Force, we're seeing this similar trend in our surrounding towns as well. Our partnerships, the HEART team, everyone knows that that's a great success. We are continuing to work closely with them to try to find ways to reduce police response in areas where we don't need a police response, like mental health and addiction. They've worked very closely with Officer Barrett on our homeless efforts. So that HEART team has been a great success, and we're continuing to build that relationship out. The Auto Theft Task Force, as I mentioned, this is Bloomfield, Bristol, East Hartford, Glastonbury, Hartford, Manchester, Rocky Hill, Southington, West Hartford, and Windsor. So our kind of capital area has provided a task force. They provide us with a detective, sometimes 2. sometimes a supervisor, to work in conjunction on a regional approach to auto theft. Of the 345 total stolen vehicles recovered, 79% of those were stolen from outside of Hartford. So these cars are being stolen in these communities, and then they're being used for criminal activity in Hartford. So it really focuses why this regional approach is so important. The stats from last year, collectively, the first full year that the auto theft unit was in place, the 10 towns had an overall decrease of 27%, which equated to 412 less stolen cars in 2022 than we saw in 2021 in the participating towns, including Hartford. It's really been a huge success. Our human trafficking task force, we're involved in two, both a federal and a state task force. Some people probably saw in the news back in September, we made a significant arrest from Madison Street, where two individuals were engaged in labor trafficking of Mexican nationals. They were arrested on federal charges with our Hartford police detectives, along with our federal partners, for conspiracy to commit labor trafficking, conspiracy to commit alien smuggling, transporting, harboring, and encouraging, and extortion, all significant federal charges, and they'll be going to federal court for that. That was a ring that was that we actually got information from Boston, so it involved multiple states. It was a huge success for that team. Accreditation, Lieutenant Trzynski is my commander of planning and accreditation. So this year, as most know, we received Tier 1 state accreditation September of 2022. The Post Council voted unanimously to give us accreditation based on our policies, procedures, and facilities, and how we complied with the standards. We continue to seek further accreditation from CALEA, which is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. Interesting, our initial plan was to do Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 state accreditation, but because there are so many Connecticut departments seeking state accreditation, we couldn't really get Tier 2 and Tier 3 scheduled. So Lieutenant Trzynski took the initiative to pursue federal accreditation, so national accreditation. So we're going to get Tier 1 state accreditation. We just met with the staff from CALEA yesterday, and we're going to start we're going to start our assessment in late July. So we're hoping to be accredited nationally by the end of this calendar year. So in the first part of the fiscal year, and then we'll kind of back into it, and we will go for Tier 2 and Tier 3 state accreditation after we achieve national accreditation. We continue to update our policies to reflect these accreditation standards. This is our patrol plan. Our daily policing plan deploys a minimum of 21 patrol cars during the day, 25 patrol cars in the evening, and 21 patrol cars overnight to respond for calls for service. These numbers do increase based on the busier summer months, but these are our staffing minimums. These cars are distributed evenly between north and south. This always comes up as a question during budget time, because when you look at the actual funding of the North and South Community Services Bureau, it's usually not even. This year, most of our vacancies, we have to have a place to put the vacancies. Most of the vacancies are in the south end, so when you look at the budget numbers, you'll see a higher budgeted number for the south end than you'll see for the north end, but that is not, our staff is equally distributed north and south. So we obviously continue to staff this 24/7 despite our low staffing numbers, and this is where a lot of the overtime comes into play, is to making sure that those cars are filled and that we're responding to calls for service. So some of the changes that have come out of the accountability bill and some of the legislation, we contracted with Trinity Health to administer mental health and wellness checks for our officers. This was a requirement out of Public Act 20-01. We also continue our regular drug testing for our sworn officers. Another initiative is the summer initiative and violent crime reduction initiative. I always present this. It's a more elaborate presentation that I usually do at the public safety meeting, which I will be doing that at the next public safety meeting. But A lot of this, we've taken a lot of the stuff that's worked in the last couple years, fine-tuned some of the things that we thought could use some increased attention, but it still really focuses on our hot spots and our hot people, deploying our targeted patrols, maintaining our street crimes unit, maintaining strong federal partnerships and task forces with the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the U.S. Marshals, parole, probation, Department of Corrections, our state and our federal courts, community engagement opportunities that we have to reduce crime. We'll talk a little bit about some grants. So that all of that stuff will be rolled out in our Safe Summer initiative, and a much more comprehensive presentation of that will be forthcoming at the next public safety meeting. So grant programs, as we know, we got a $2 million total grant for the city, just under $2 million for the Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative. This is a great grant because it doesn't just fund law enforcement. It funds a lot of things across the city and with some of our NGOs and our nonprofits and folks that help us with some of this stuff. This grant is kind of still in the processes of being rolled out, but we applied. It was a competitive grant. We were awarded this grant under the expansion category, which means that we're supplementing some existing violence reduction efforts. Basically, this grant is broken down into target violence intervention at the highest need groups, engaging in community, public awareness, and addressing community conditions that make it easier for violence to occur without detection, and integrating public safety and multi-system partnerships to implement programs that are strategic, data-driven, and performance-focused. So more to come on that. We also got the COPS hiring grant for this year, which funds 2/3 of the salary for our recruits. All 12 of the recruits that are currently in the academy are funded under this COPS hiring grant program. And that, although this slide says it starts next week, that class started on April 3rd and is underway. Our strategic initiatives, continuing to reduce Part 1 crime with a focus on our shootings, both non-fatal and fatal shootings. As you kind of heard, we're off to a much better start this year, and I think that's a result of some of the numbers that I'll share with you. In 2022, we took 367 illegal firearms off the streets. 58 of those were ghost guns. That was the highest number of guns we've taken off the streets since we've started recording how many guns we take off the streets. This year, we have 109 total, and 16 of which are ghost guns. Interesting, 59% of those firearms that were seized were mobile, either from a person or from a vehicle, and 49% of them were taken from a convicted felon. I do get this question sometimes, where these guns come from. Our biggest out-of-state contributor to these firearms, when we trace them back, we use the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. The ATF helps us trace these guns, where they actually originated from. Vermont leads the way with 24 firearms that came from Vermont. And then North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida are tied with 16 per state. So those are our biggest contributors from out of state where these illegal guns come from. Our 2021 homicide clearance rate was 76%, well above the national average, and that's a great number. We'd love to see 100%, and as these investigations continue, that percentage will increase. Some of these cases take years to put together, but in that year we had 34 homicides and we arrested 29 actors, including one pending warrant that's outstanding right now. Our 2021 non-fatal shooting clearance rate was 38%. Prior to the grant that funded our non-fatal shooting team, we used to average around 10%, which is around the national average. So that is up almost 4 times a clearance rate for non-fatal shootings since we introduced the non-fatal shooting team. Another great success for the department and for the community there. 2022 homicides are 39. We've arrested 21 actors in those 39 homicides. So our clearance rate for those incidents is at 41% right now. It's early in the year. Based on what we know in these cases, we do anticipate that clearance rate will be in the 70% range as well. But again, these homicide cases sometimes take a while to put together. We have to wait for medical examiner information. We have to wait for evidence processing at the labs and things like that. So we're going to see that number increase. But our non-fatal shooting clearance rate for 2022 was, again, 33% so far, over 3 times higher than the national average. I'm sorry, did I skip that? I did. Thank you. Recruitment and hiring, obviously that's a strategic initiative. That's one of our focuses. Continuing to aggressively recruit, hire, and train our qualified candidates with a focus on achieving our mission to build a police force that reflects the diversity in the community. We've already gone over these stats, 35.88% racial and ethnic minorities in the department, up 3% since last year. We also last year signed on to the 30 by 30 initiative, which is a commitment to a goal of representing 30% female in the department by 2030. We are currently at 15%, which is above the national average, but that signing on to that initiative is a commitment for our goal to increase those numbers even more. Am I good now? Communications and relationships under strategic initiatives. We're going to continue to build and leverage our relationships with the city and public safety communities to reduce crime. We will be finally hosting our first Citizens Police Academy. This was an initiative that I talked about back when I first became chief, and then COVID hit, and we had no real safe way of doing a Citizens Police Academy, so that will start on September 13th. We'll be releasing more information on that as we get closer to that date. Enhanced citizen satisfaction. We're going to talk a little bit about that technology here, but I wanted to talk about the community building a little bit more first. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Katie, our new facility dog. She came from Puppies Behind Bars. She has been on the job now for 7 months, and she's already getting 2 awards. She's getting the annual Peer Support Award from the Cable Annual Statewide CIT Conference, and that's April 19th. And then she's getting the Excellence of Service Award from the Mark Twain House. I also just wanted to, I've been inundated with letters about Katie. I wish I could hire more dogs. And I thought that it would be interesting to just read this one, and this is from Belizzi School. Hello, the visit with Katie at Dwight Belizzi School was an amazing experience. The request to Officer Gaudino was initially made to see if Katie could support 2 siblings at school who were coping with grief at the time. The siblings were very excited about the experience, and Katie was able to bring happiness to them during the difficult time they were going through. The siblings were not the only ones who benefited from this amazing experience. The staff, teachers, and administration were also excited about her visit. Katie brought such peace to everyone and definitely decreased stress and anxiety in those she met that day. It would be amazing to have more visits with Officer Gaudino and Katie, as it would help support the children who are struggling with mental health and behavior issues. Katie was not only a support to the students at Dwight Belizzi, but the staff, who was also burnt out. Hope to see you again soon. And I've got a bunch of these letters that I can certainly share with everybody, but it's just great to hear, when we got Katie, when we approved this program and we got her, we had no idea how big of an impact that she was going to have, not just on the department. I'm always happy to have her visit me in the office, but also in the community as well. Our continued community outreach includes events like Good Vibrations, Read to a Child, Know Thy Neighbor, the Knox Job Training Program, Cops and Bobbers, Faith in Blue, National Night Out, and neighborhood cleanup events, and the list goes on and on and on here. The enhanced citizen satisfaction initiatives that we're talking about include Power Edge, which is a citizen engagement and feedback solution that we are pursuing for the police department. This keeps citizens informed with automated updates that come in when you're waiting for a call for service. So I don't know what to equate it to, but it's almost like you're getting a constant update as to when the officer's going to be there. So we do get a lot of complaints about how long it takes officers to get to certain calls. We're hoping that this is a good way to keep people informed while they're waiting for an officer. It also measures citizen satisfaction with text surveys, so we'll be able to get some feedback from folks, and it works cohesively with our CAD RMS system. The second thing is our Hartford P2C, which stands for Police to Citizen. This is a program that we're in the process of testing right now, which allows people to directly report incidents through a web-based portal. So the complainant is able to enter certain information into that portal to save time. These incidents can be reported through these incidents that right now we're experimenting with are lower, lower priority incidents like lower valued larcenies, property damage, lost or stolen property, identity theft, and other non-emergency incidents. And basically the citizen would report their incident in a step-by-step process on the web portal, and then that case will be assigned to the appropriate division or officer to further investigate and follow up with the citizen. So those are two of our kind of technology initiatives that we're hoping that will allow us to give better service. And then efficient use of our resources, exploring avenues to maintain all services in the city while maintaining officer wellness, which is very important as we deal with the staffing levels that we're at now. And we'll continue to seek grants and other funding opportunities. We've had great success with that, especially in the last couple of years. So organizational enhancements, we're streamlining our response to FOI requests. We have, especially with all of our cameras and our body-worn cameras, we have seen a significant increase in FOI requests over the last couple of years. We are looking to civilianize some of that by combining our FOI and civil litigation unit and have it fall under the records division. The civilian staff, which will be added to this and cross-trained so that they can handle some of these FOI requests and so we can get them done in a timely manner. We talked about accreditation. That's a strategic initiative for sure for us to continue seeking national accreditation and then eventually finishing our state accreditation as well. Budget comparisons from 2023 to 2024 here. The 2023 adopted budget of $49 million. The 2024 recommended budget, $53 million, a change of $3.5 million. It's up 7.2%. You can see the grants here from 2023 to 2024. That significant jump, 68.5%, or just over $1 million, is our COPS grant funding for the newly hired officers. The rest of that increase is basically the sworn officer compensation, which is the contractual obligation that started in July 1st of last year. 2 administrative assistants to support the FOI project we just talked about. Our goal to hire 50 new sworn police officers in fiscal year 2024, 25 in October and another 25 in March of next year. And this also assumes some continued attrition. Crossing guards continue to fall under the Board of Education. Fiscal year 2024 budget highlights, as you can probably see, are focusing on hiring and retention, and our efforts to hire a diverse workforce that represents the city. Minority representation continues to be our high priority. Our non-personnel budget is essentially flat, with some increases in software and some other areas, and the addition of software to support the citizen engagement that I just referred to, Power Engage, is also an added expense in our non-personal side of the budget. This one might be tough to see, although it doesn't look too bad there, but this is just a full breakdown of the department, our staffing, race and ethnicity and gender. So this is just a further breakdown of our 136 minority officers that account for almost 36% of the department. When you add that the department's 15.04% female, when you combine female and racial and ethnic minority, we are at 42% for the entire department. And I think that is it for the presentation.
Thank you, Chief. It's so nice to see you guys here in front of us in person. I know that, prior years, we've all been on the screen, and first of all, let me start by saying thank you. I commend your department, all of the police officers. I remember driving through Franklin Avenue when we used to have what were called flash mobs, right? Shootings where usually people hide and police officers have to run towards that. So I know personally that it's not easy being a police officer, so I thank you guys for keeping the city of Hartford safe. I have a question, and I know that you probably said this to me already, Chief, but with Katie in the K-9 unit, she doesn't go and see her handler, right?
She doesn't what?
She doesn't go and see her handler, the person that trained her in corrections? They never go back to visit?
No, that's a good question. They don't. I mean, the handler basically trains her to a certain level inside the prison, and then they have the graduation, and I think that's the last time that they see him. It's up in upper state New York. I know it's about a 3-hour drive up there because that's where the graduation was held. Due to COVID, we all were going to originally go, but they didn't let us go to this one. So I don't think she sees the handler again.
And do you think we'll get more dogs like Katie? I know they're very therapeutical for like the children. And could you share those letters with council when you have a chance?
I can. I wish I could read them all, but they're very good. So we asked for more than one, but if you remember, when we applied for this program, there were like 500 officers that applied, and I think they only had like maybe a dozen dogs, and we were very fortunate to have, Officer Gaudino did a great job of presenting, and he had to be interviewed and everything, and he was selected. So we asked for 2. They basically, politely said, no, we have other departments to consider. But there are other programs like that. Sergeant Morrow oversees our canine division, and they've been looking to find other programs that are good. But my intent is definitely to expand it. It's been a huge success. Everybody loves that dog. It's been on the news, like, it seems like once a month since we got the dog.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting Katie. So on page 22-2, item on line number 35 for the K-9 unit. So I see that in 2022, we had a budget of 65, but now is at 264,737. And that's because now we house more dogs in the K-9 unit?
Yeah, so the K-9 unit has expanded significantly, and I can break that down for you. Traditionally we had German Shepherds in the patrol division, and they would, do tracking and things like that, building searches for burglaries. We still have 4 patrol dogs in the K-9 unit. One of them is cross-trained in narcotics detection, and one of them is cross-trained in firearms detection. So some of that increase is this increased training. We also have one K-9 assigned to the Auto Theft Task Force that's cross-trained in firearms as well. But where the increase really comes in is we have 6 labs now. 1 arson dog, 2 bomb dogs, 2 narcotics dogs, and 1 firearm dog that work out of the detective division or the special teams division. So we've almost tripled and then you add Katie. So we've almost kind of tripled our canine usage because we found other ways to use dogs, not just patrol dogs that drive around the street, but the bomb detection dogs. We're part of a regional bomb squad. The narcotics detection dogs have proved very fruitful. One of our dogs works with Homeland Security and goes through parcels at the post office. They don't have a dog that's trained in that. And that gets us asset forfeiture money and pieces of some of those investigations. So we've found ways to really utilize these dogs in different ways, but it has resulted in an increase in the budget for sure.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And the Hartford Police Department, in your professional opinion, how many officers do you think we need in order to not have some of the officers work X amount of hours based on any event or anything that's happening in the city of Hartford, where you have no choice but to call in people because you need the coverage?
So when I was a captain, I think it was in 2016, we did a analysis of the department, a staffing analysis of the department, and the number that came back then, if you consider all of the programs that we wanted to fund, remember, one of my commitments when I became chief was walk beats. When we had 440 officers, I had 24 walk beats out there. I have none today because I just can't staff the walk beats. That number back then was 475, and I think we've gone by that number pretty closely. I think right now in the budget, our goal is 472. But I think that if we were able to get back to that 440 number, we would be able to reduce the order-ins, the holdovers, and this kind of overtime cycle that is burning people out and driving them other places. But that that falls into the grass is not always greener. Some of these smaller departments that these officers are going to, I think some of them are having buyer's remorse because the smaller departments are having trouble too. So the order-ins and the shift continuations and the holdovers and things are occurring in departments across the state, large and small. It's a problem that we're dealing with, industry-wide, and until we can really get that spark to recruit more people. I was really confident when we got 22. I thought we turned a corner, and then this time we could only get 12 that could pass, the test. So we have a good group right now in the process. We're hopefully getting the names from HR. I think there's 149 applicants in this most recent process that just closed. So I'm hoping to see those numbers increase.
So do you think that maybe within the next year, you could get to the goal where you want to, and we can perhaps have the allocation for the walk-beat officers?
If we could get those 50 that we're shooting for in this budget, and we maintain attrition at a level, we're at 16 right now for this fiscal year, and we're in April, right? So we've got, 3 more months to go. So let's say we lose, 20 or 20, let's say we lose 25. So if I can gain 25, that'll put me over the 400 mark, and I do think we could at least start to reintroduce the walk beats. I don't think we could get to 24. Honestly, it'll probably be another year. It'll probably be 2 years total before we can get back to that 440. If you imagine that you're always going to lose some officers. We always have officers that go to the FBI, the DEA, the state police. They step up to federal jobs. What we have to stop is losing these officers to other local police departments like Weathersfield and Rocky Hill and East Hartford and places like that.
Okay, so this budget, projected budget, is including those 50 officers?
Yep.
Okay.
That's our goal, is 50 in the next fiscal year. And remember, we have 12 in right now in this fiscal year. So, I think once we get north of that 400 mark, 410, I think we're in a place where we can start looking at those walk beats again and, start reintroducing them.
Thank you, Chief. Councilwoman Rossetti?
Thank you. Everyone looks really happy to be here. Why didn't you bring Katie?
You know what? In hindsight, I probably should have.
Lost
Next
your
year.
chance.
Next
Lost your
year.
chance, Chief. Oh, that's all I can say.
I missed one there.
So I'm looking at significant features, which is my favorite part in the budget book, 22-1. And I know you touch on it here. So we talk about the 22-1. We talk about the 7.2% increase. And in the budget book on 22-1, you attribute it to the 2 positions, the union and non-union salary adjustments, overtime, funding for the citizen engagement software, and the 50 new positions. Do we, number one, have a breakdown of that for the 7.9%?
I don't have a breakdown of that right now, but I can certainly get you that.
Because that I would like to see. And number 2, particularly the overtime, where are we at from year to year on the overtime?
I can get you the year to year, but I can tell you the last 2 years we've been extremely high. We used to be able to keep our overtime budget in that, $4 million range, and I think we've come pretty close to doubling that the last couple of years. But I can get you the specifics on the overtime. It's with the attrition, with still having to give contractual days off, sick and injured list on any given day, we're filling quite a few overtime shifts. But I can give you the specifics year over year on budget. How far back do you want to go?
Okay, so you can get me the 2 positions, the software, everything that's laid out here in significant features, correct? That you attribute to the 7.2% increase?
Yeah, I could probably tell you which ones are bigger than others, but I can get you the exact, and that's probably the easier way to do it.
That's kind of that question. And then, when we think about, I know my council president touched on how many officers, but how do we start younger to, number one, your point of trying to recruit Hartford residents or have Hartford residents, people of color, people who reflect our community? How do we utilize that by, starting with, I know there's a whole complication with the PAL program and police explorers, but how do we do that? How can we do that in a better way that, number one, starts with, as we look at on this dais, how maybe we look at recreation in a different way? So we start with people younger, so we're not dealing with them people older, or even with what I do for a living. How do we do that? How can we do that better?
It's not that we're not doing it well, for sure. I mean, we have explorers here that we support. You know, we send them to camp every year. We have a great explorer program that Sergeant Mordashevitz runs. We have a great PAL program here, and there's always some complications, but I think it works. It generally works well with the PAL program, the explorer program, the cadet program. In our efforts, we haven't done anything. We haven't regressed in any way in our search for cadets. I came into the department as a cadet, but we're having just as much problems filling the cadet programs as we are filling the officer program. So these things are connected. We are getting, for example, we just recently posted for crime analyst positions that are work in C4. These are folks that, you know, that sit there and they analyze crime and they help us solve crime on the back end, and they do, you know, they do great work. We have people that are in that process that said, you know, I really wanted to be a cop, but I don't want to be a cop right now. So I'm going to apply for this job. I'm going to get some experience, and then maybe when things calm down, I'll apply to be a police officer. So we're still seeing people reluctant to get into law enforcement, and that affects the PAL kids becoming police officers. Even though they have great relationships with our officers, they know what we do, they're just still reluctant to make that transition into becoming a police officer. Same thing with the cadet program. You know, we used to be able to fill all 10 cadet positions, and we struggle to do that now. So it's all interconnected, but, you know, some of the things that I named are new. Like, you know, this year I think there's 6 or 8 of us involved in the Read to a Child program, myself included. Myself and Deputy Chief Lee, we split weeks, and we're in the Read to a Child program, starting in very young, and in hopes that they make that connection to police officers, and that we become role models again, and people want to become cops. So we're working on all those things. You know, it's a delicate balance with, you know, how much we engage with schools, how much you want to see police officers in schools. But we're doing all those things. It's just we have to get over this hurdle of recruitment, where people are just reluctant to get into law enforcement right now.
Do our explorers presently reflect the initiative of looking like, number one, Hartford residents and/or looking like residents in the city of Hartford?
Yes, the majority of our explorers are Hartford residents. I don't have a racial and ethnic breakdown of the explorer program. I can get that to you, but you know, we don't have a limit on that. We take everybody that wants to be a police explorer. It creates a stepping stone to the cadet program. Both PAL and the explorers essentially.
True, but if we really are saying there's an initiative to grow the police department in a diverse way, wouldn't it be an opportunity to start it at that level?
And that's exactly what we do. But, you know, like I said, we will, you know, engaging young people at that age to be interested in law enforcement is important. It's key, no matter their gender, their race. I believe that, I don't want to speculate. I can get you the breakup of our Explorer program as a follow-up, but.
All right. Thank you, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to have Councilwoman Tiana Hercules, and then I'll follow on the dais. Councilwoman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council President. Through you, thank you, Chief Doty and team, for your presentation, and of course for the work that you do throughout our city. Certainly one of the most toughest jobs, but you know me, the criminal defense attorney, I'm going to challenge you on a few things. I want to talk a little bit about pretextual stops or motor vehicle stops. Now, you mentioned that 267 guns being taken off the street, and I think 59% of those were a result of either probably a motor vehicle stop or on a person walking. And while certainly that is a priority, I'm just wondering if these types of stops are the most cost-effective use of our resources. I'm sure council have observed these type of stops. I actually observed one last week on Capitol Ave where a gentleman was pulled over. You know, you have 2 officers in the car, soon dispatch 2 more officers, blockading the gentleman, passenger removed from the car searched, men let go. I asked the gentleman, you know, why were you pulled over? The reason given were tents on the window. And so certainly I understand there's a lot of strategy and probably data and stuff that goes behind the scenes and why these things occur, but I worry more about the implication of those stops that don't result in the removal of a firearm. And even when they do, you know, smart lawyers like myself get those cases tossed all the time. And so there you have more resources being wasted. And so you have young children observing these stops. You have the gentlemen themselves who are now coming into contact with police in a way that could potentially be fatal, in a way that could easily be characterized as harassing, and then we wonder why young Black and Hispanic men don't want to be police officers, right? And so I just would like to know a little bit more about why this tactic is so broadly utilized, and again, not to discount those guns being taken off the street. It's certainly the number one priority, right? But how many stops out of the universe of stops, what is the percentage where it does yield a firearm? And how do we look at that differently if we're talking about improving our police community relations? So that's my first question, I guess. Is this a cost-effective use of our resources? Does it do more harm than good by way of community police relations? And is it truly, how many stops do you do of this nature that actually, and what's the percentage that actually yield a firearm or something fruitful, I guess, if not a gun?
Sure. So I do think it's a cost-effective use of our resources. These are motor vehicle stops at the core. We have, in all the NRZ meetings that I go to and all the community meetings that I go to, one of the number one things that I hear about is traffic safety. A tinted window violation is not a traffic safety violation at its core, but a lot of these stops serve two functions. One of them serve a function of there is a core motor vehicle violation, and we have a lot of accidents that have been occurring, especially in the state in the last couple of years. So traffic enforcement is a good use of our time when it comes to traffic safety. These particular, a lot of the officers that, as I said, of the 367 guns that we took off the street last year, the vast majority of them were mobile, almost 60%, 59% of them were either on a person or in a vehicle. We know that these guns are being used in shootings from vehicles most of the time, also from people most of the time. A lot of these stops are intelligence-led. Again, we focus on hot places, hot people. We know, and many times we know the people that are involved in this activity. We have intelligence on the vehicles, and if they commit a traffic violation, then that's the beginning of an investigation that could lead to those guns being off the streets. I don't have the stats on the rate of you say that attorneys get them off. I don't think that that's always true, but I do know that those 367 guns just in that 1 year are no longer on the street and can't be used to shoot somebody. Our officers are always are trained to work within the law, and they develop reasonable suspicion in those stops. They can't just arbitrarily search vehicles. They have a process they have to go through. If they can develop the information that leads them to believe that there's a gun in the car, then that's what they do. They don't find a gun every single time, but we do, as part of the Racial Profiling Act, we do keep track of all those car searches, how many of them are successful, how many of them are not. But it has been a particularly violent couple of years, especially when it comes to gun violence, and there's more and more firearms out there. I think part of our, certainly part of our public safety plan is to try to get our hands on those illegal guns. We do sometimes, especially if there is reasonable suspicion developed to believe that there's a firearm in the vehicle, you will see more officers there. I do get people that call me a lot of times and say, hey, why does it take 4 officers to do that stop? If there's a firearm in that car, that's a dangerous stop. So we do have backup officers that come there and work on those. It is a balance. We certainly can't search every car. We can't, pull everybody over. That would be overreaching. But we focus on intelligence-led policing here and evidence-based policing here, and that's kind of how we go about that business. And if I didn't think it was worth it, we certainly wouldn't do it that way.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, I don't discount the importance of removing the firearms off of the street, but I do definitely see the other side when folks feel harassed, when folks feel targeted by the police, and what that does to further that gap between community and police, right? And so it's doing the education, the information sharing, so that community members do understand why these things happen, because it can often feel like over-policing and overreaching when you see these things on a repeated basis with a certain demographic in your community. So I just don't want that point to ever be missed. Through you, Council President, and I thank you, Councilwoman Rossetti, for the question about the breakdown, because that was something I was wondering. But look at the numbers, let's just say specifically Black male police officers at 22 in comparison, a very low number in comparison to the others. But what's more striking to me is the lack of leadership positions that are currently being held by officers of color. So I would just be curious about what the promotion strategies are. Certainly, I can understand how that could go against morale if you don't see officers who reflect or are representative of you in, authority or supervisory positions. That could also be discouraging to become a police officer for a Black or Hispanic male or woman. And so I just am curious about what types of strategies are currently employed to help officers of color move up in the ranks.
Sure. So the promotional tests that go from sergeant through captain is a civil service test that is given through HR. Part of the cultural analysis originally 2 years ago, and part of the updated 2-year cultural analysis, which was just submitted the end of last week, shows that racial and ethnic minorities and females are evenly represented throughout the department and throughout the ranks based on the representation in the department overall. When you get beyond that to assistant chief, right now my assistant chief of police position is 100% minority. It's assistant chief Al. And the deputy chiefs of police, I have 4 of them. That is 50%. I have a Black female deputy chief and a Black male deputy chief and 2 white male deputy chiefs, so it's 50% there. At the captain rank, which is a civil service tested position, that's probably the lowest at 20%. And then when you get into lieutenants and sergeants ranks, those numbers flare up again, and in the officers rank and detectives rank, they flare up again as well. There is, again, that testing process is one that is set through the civil service side, through HR, but we have our fraternal orders like the Guardians and things that have stepped up to the plate and helped with study materials and study sessions and things for our minority officers. So there are things in play to assist, but at the end of the day, that's a testing process that goes through HR.
Thank you. And my last question through you, Council President. I remember last year we talked about, or you had mentioned, I think it was called park and walks, and kind of how this strategy is deployed when there's a call for service. Officers would often park their cars in those areas and walk, walk in the neighborhood after the call for service. And I'm just curious, and this kind of was one of the justifications for the higher need for more staffing. And so I guess I'm just curious about the correlation between that activity and reduction in crime, and if there is any research that points to these park and walks being a strategy that does reduce crime.
Absolutely. Park and walk is a community policing strategy that allows the officers to get out of their car. In the winter, the windows are rolled up because they have the heat on. In the summer, the windows are rolled up because they have the air conditioners on, and they don't. In a modern era of policing where most of our cops are in cars, as I said, we don't have the luxury of walk beats like we did a few years ago. I hope to have them again soon. That is an opportunity for that officer to get out of that car and engage with businesses and engage with residents, and there is a direct correlation with those relationships equating to lower crime, where these folks will then call that officer if they have information about a crime. They'll call the police sooner if they see something suspicious, or that see something, say something kind of adage will kick in if they have a better relationship with officers. So really the park and walks and what we call a 1059 or a directed patrol are ways for these officers to engage with people in all different parts of the city. You know, they might take a call for service in one of our one of our areas that there's a higher crime rate, or they might take a call for service in an area where there's less crime rate. But the goal there is to engage with the community, build relationships, kind of tear down the walls so that people, understand each other. That officer now has a new connection in the community, and that community member has a new connection in the police department, and that fosters trust and legitimacy, and that will, that will result, the better relationships result in better cooperation, which will result in less crime.
That would be great. I would love to see any data or, research that speaks to that. It would be very interesting and insightful, so thank you. Thank you, Madam President. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman LeBron?
Just want to acknowledge the police officers on duty who's responding to a call as you're talking. I think it's very timely. So this is my fourth budget season, and over the period of time, I just want to be a little bit more vulnerable and acknowledge you, Chief Doty, and the officers in the city of Hartford. So I publicly want to just state that since I've been an elected official, my home has been vandalized, my cars have been vandalized, my family's life has been threatened, and my life has been threatened. There were times where I strongly considered, was this the right move for me and my family? But because of the strength and the professionalism and the guidance and the leadership from you, Chief Doty, I want to thank you. Because of you and the department, we feel safer. We feel safer in our city. My family, I'm talking specifically. My mama feels better, who I know is one of the viewers that are watching. She wanted me out of politics. But because of your safety, it allowed this Puerto Rican male in the city of Hartford to continue serving my community as the best way as I think I could. And this continues to this day. As I announced for mayor, recently I got a death threat and letters to my home. And it's hard. But I want to thank you, Chief, and the officers who responded, because it allows me to do what I think God put me on this planet to do, and that is to serve my community and the community that I love. And I want to serve it more, and I want to serve it better. But thank you for allowing me to do that. So my questions are going to be in 3 buckets, because I want my experience to be everyone's experience. And I want the community to believe that the experience that I experience is one that they can have themselves, and they can have access to themselves so that they can stay in this city, they can live in this city, they could move back to this city. So the first one is around mental health and the importance for the officers themselves. As a social worker in my background, we have to take vicarious trauma and trauma-based classes, and those things have to be continuous. What is the department's stand on that process? What is what is your approach in understanding that trauma is happening to your police officers? And it's happening daily. And what are we doing to wash that trauma off these police officers so they can be their best selves?
Thank you first, and I'll just pass that publicly, that thanks on to the men and women that are out there every day answering those calls for service. I was one once, but I feel like now my role is to support them in what they do, but they're the ones on the front lines and doing that work. So I appreciate that, and just publicly I'll pass that along to the entire department, and I thank you for acknowledging them. So, you know, I've been in law enforcement now for a while, for 27 years. It seems like just yesterday, but and I don't think that we always acknowledged that if the impacts of the things that we saw. I did 10 years in the crime scene division, responding to nothing but crime scenes. And I think that the industry's come a long way, you know, in the last probably 5 to 10 years in recognition of mental health in the profession, but we're not doing nearly enough as a profession, and I don't think that anyone has all of the answers. But what I can tell you is we're taking some steps in the right directions. You heard me reference, you know, the wellness checks. Now, it's sad that that took an accountability bill to make us do that, but I'm glad that it did. These are just 15-minute check-ins that the officers are doing with, you know, service provider, mental health professional, to try to identify problems early. I think that's the key in anything, is to try to identify issues early and address them. That is one way. Another way is, as an agency now, an officer that shows up to a traumatic event, we fill out all of like the same paperwork that we would fill out for any other workers' compensation claim, right? So we're acknowledging that that officer saw something, a death, a dismemberment, you know, some kind of tragedy, and making sure that we initiate that process where that officer can get help. A lot of times that's the big hurdle in law enforcement, a lot of pride, and sometimes officers, male, female, you name it, don't ask for help. They don't take that step. So this is kind of taking that step for them. You know, we kind of initiate that, and once that ball's rolling, it's kind of easier to stay with it. You know, it's harder to kind of say no and walk away from it. So that's another way. Obviously, you know, training in identifying these kinds of things. We have a full-time employee assistance program in Hartford. They are actually working on an app-based system that will be out to all the officers on their everybody has a work phone now. And this app has proven to be very successful in other departments in keeping officers on track and keeping them mentally well. We are now facing the battle of not just trauma in wellness, but overworked in wellness. You know, we are asking a lot more of our officers because of our staffing levels, and we have to keep our eyes on that too. We're trying to balance, you know, giving officers time off with not creating too many vacancies to make other officers have to work. So it's a constant effort. I think we're doing well, but there is always room for improvement, certainly in that area, and we'll keep looking for ways to better serve our officers.
Thank you. Yeah, continuously. I think, you know, the magic wand can't be trauma training and you're cured, right? So using that, so that's the mental health of the officers and the people that are delivering services. So next, the people receiving services and the mental health approach. The HEART team and the diversion or the differentiation between our responses. How has the HEART team, can you maybe anecdotally speak to how difference it's making, particularly for folks who have consistent mental health phone calls on them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you'll probably get some more specifics from ES&T on like data and numbers, but just from a field perspective, you know, when this kind of came up, when the idea of expanding what we used to call Unit 99, which was we had one, you know, person that could go out there and help us with these types of calls. You know, the kind of initial feedback from officers was this, you know, kind of it wasn't necessarily taken with open arms, right? Now you hear officers on the radio every day. Hey, can I get the Heart team? Can I get the Heart team? Where's the Heart team? I don't think they would. It's kind of like body-worn cameras. Nobody wanted them in the beginning because they were afraid of them, and then once they embraced what their capabilities were, now they won't do without them. And the Heart team's the same thing. I think, the biggest problem with our law enforcement response to mental health and addiction and things like that is that, if somebody has a crisis on a Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then on a Wednesday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going to see two totally different police officers that have no idea about their history, about, what their needs are. Here, this is almost a clearinghouse of information on these individuals that are repeated, and those are the big ones, right? The ones that are in crisis. Everybody can have a crisis, once in a while, and some people go about their business and they're fine. But others, it's a repeated issue, and the familiarity that the Heart team brings to them in knowing what their needs are and addressing those needs quickly is, in what I've seen, has been a huge improvement. You're not ending up with an officer who doesn't know the history, bringing the individual to a hospital, to the purple pod that doesn't know their history, that then just kind of brushes them off and sends them on their way so that they can fall back into crisis. The response model that pays more attention and continues to help that person and know that person is going to pay dividends over time if it hasn't already.
So through you, Madam President, I want to just shift a little bit to finance. So two things about the budget. That's what we're here for. The first thing is that you're receiving a new staff person or allocation for the FOI request specifically. My understanding that the governor has one staff dedicated to FOI, and I guess my question is, you figure the governor has a lot of FOI requests that requires a staff person. What is the level of FOI requests do we have data on the amount of requests and the amount of human capital spent on FOIs within the department?
I can get you the data. I don't have it in front of me here, but I can get you the backlog and the number. The difference that has happened in the last couple years is the body-worn camera footage and the C4 camera footage and camera footage. The FOI request that used to be, can you get me a copy of this report?
Right.
Which we, even then, the person has to redact it.
Right.
We have to make sure we're not releasing anything that we can't release. So there is some work to that. But now we're going through hours of video, and not just one video. If we have 3 or 4 officers that respond to a domestic, let's say, and there's a request for the body-worn camera video of that domestic, there's 3 or 4 angles, and you have to go through all of that camera footage to find out what we can release, what we can't release, redact anything that we can't release. So it's really the video and even the audio to some degree. Like a lot of folks now are asking for the 911 call, the dispatch, the camera. It's so burdensome in its volume, and sometimes having to sit there, if someone's out on a call for an hour, I literally need someone to watch the hour of the video.
Right.
So that's really what it is. Maybe the governor's office is not getting as much video.
I don't think they have as many videos because they don't have the video camera.
Yeah. But that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We need like a technical engineer or TV production person or something. That will probably be a skill set, a qualification for HR. Year after year, the Puerto Rican Parade seems to be something that is consistently challenged. Forget about the ops side of it, right? One of the major things that continues to be a struggle in this cultural celebration is the emphasis on the amount of money being spent by the department. Words like blowing out the budget have been used, and so there's been this push and pull from a community that is 60% Latino, primarily mostly Puerto Rican, and a pushback, or as Councilman Gale would say, clawback attempts on the Puerto Rican Parade. Do we have exact numbers on the amount of dollars that are spent over in the Puerto Rican parade, let's say over last year compared to the 10 years? Because it's always blowing out the budget, but we never know what that is.
I can certainly give you the numbers, as far as the, what is spent. I do know that for me, it's more about the staffing now, certainly, than it is about the budget. That event, there are a lot of events out there that require a lot of staffing, but that event, because not just the Puerto Rican Day Parade and the Puerto Rican Festival that's downtown, but you have the caravanning that goes on into the wee hours of the morning that locks down, in essentially the entire South End. So we have officers that are reporting for duty at, 9 a.m., 8:30 a.m. to prepare for the parade, and then they work the festival, and then they're here until 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. So for me, again, it comes to staffing. I can give you, and that's the challenge that we every year, find a way to figure out. Because I think certainly we all know the importance of these events. It's not the only event that's brought us these types of challenges. We had even, Riverfest for a number of years brought us these challenges to the point where unfortunately we don't have it anymore. But when it comes to dollars and cents, that's easy for me to give you a breakdown of it over the past few years.
Thank you. And then lastly, I had the privilege of meeting Katie. I think we need more Katies. Could use a Katie today. I
I
think.
will definitely bring Katie to the next
Yeah,
budget hearing if I'm here.
See, I told you to bring Katie.
I think from a community service standpoint, like if every CSO had a Katie, I think that would do wonders to present the softer side and the human element of the men and women in blue, or the women and men in blue, should I say. So that's just a soft recommendation.
It's a great example of something you just never know how successful it's going to be, because it could have easily flopped too, right? We didn't know. I love dogs, but we don't know how something like that's going to go over. And I think the best story is the first day she was here. She, of course, with rank comes some privilege. So I got to meet her, first. She came to my office and, got dog hair on my couch, which is great. And she left there though and went to an event at the Excel Center, and somebody was having a panic attack. And the dog, like within the first hour of her being here, calmed the lady down. And I mean, it was just a great story. And she's only been here for 7 months. I think she's probably been one of the most impactful things that we've done. I got the department accredited for the first time in its history. But Katie is going to be my #1 resume builder, I think, for, as I go on in my career someday. It's great, and we will definitely expand that program.
It's the stories that count,
Yeah.
It's these stories. So, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilman. If we had Katie here, we'd probably leave here at midnight. Councilman Hernandez?
I've acknowledged with all my experience that I blew it. I should have brought Katie. I will fix it next year.
So I have one question only. So you mentioned earlier that there's a little bit of a struggle with engaging candidates and just like any other industry, just like any other employer. Looking at the budget on page 22.2, on the police academy, there's compared to the revised budget, there's an increase of about 60% on the recommended budget. Then I looked at the next page on 22.3, and obviously, the explanation is pretty much there. There's an increase also of 16 FTEs on the police academy. Then I looked at the detailed budget, and it's clearly the answer is there. It's all of it is on regular salaries, which now everything correlates for me. But with that struggle of engaging candidates and recruits, how can you walk me through the thought process on that substantial increase in FTEs, at least compared to the adopted, budget last year? It's a 60% increase in FTE. Can you walk me through that process?
So I believe that the thing about this is it's kind of a picture in time, right? So if they take this picture in time when I have 22 recruits in the academy, they fall as FTEs in the academy. Is that what you're saying, like the number of FTEs in the academy? So if there's not a class going on when this picture in time is taken, then you would only see the academy staff, which is a lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and two officers that's the full-time academy staff. We also have a lieutenant, a sergeant, and an officer that are full-time in recruitment, which is separate from the academy. They're the ones that are going to the job fairs, the churches, out in the community, passing out flyers, helping people get through the written test, the oral test, the physical agility. They do diet work. They do physical fitness testing and training. That's separate from the academy as well. There's not a lot of places with short staffing that have able to maintain a full-time recruitment division, but we have dedicated ourselves to do that.
Okay, I think that makes sense. I wasn't aware of the 14 staff, as part of the police academy. I thought that it was all 42 were all recruits or candidates, but there's 14 of them. Then that leaves about 26, about 26 for recruits, which aligns with the numbers that you have shown, this year on the graduating class of the 22, and then you have about how many on starting in April? About 20?
12.
12, okay. So then it aligns for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Surgeon, do you have any questions? Councilman Gale?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Hernandez, because that was the question I was going to ask as well. Looking at our budget book. Also, though, looking at our budget book, we've got this that tells us how many employees are per division last year and how many you're looking for coming up. So when I look at detention, it says 30 positions in the existing budget, and it says 30 positions in the requested budget. When I go to the line items, however, now I gotta find it again, but when I go to the line item for detention, there's a pretty substantial salary jump. So on my budget line item, it's line 884, and right below it is the regular salary, regular payroll. In the current budget, it's 2.2 million, and it's going to 2.5 million. So there's an almost $300,000 jump, but I don't see any jump in employees. So I can't imagine everybody's getting a raise that equals that, but just wondering. And you can certainly get back to us with the.
So you're on page 22 of the line item under detention, 212030?
Yep.
So I have fiscal 2023 adopted 2.7 million, fiscal 2024 recommended 3.1 million, which would reflect that roughly 7% or so increase, unless you're looking somewhere else.
Well, look at the line right below it is the payroll. But you're telling us in the budget book that you're not changing the number of employees, that it's still.
So you're going from 2.197, so 2.2 to 2.4.
Right.
So I would have to look at exactly what that lines out to, but again, the problem with taking the problem that I've always had, and I've done the budget for the department for a long time, is that these, especially payroll and personnel costs, that department moves every day. It's in flux. So you have regular detention staff, and then on certain days that regular detention staff is off. So we run a 5-2-5-3 schedule, right? So if we're looking at a day where the regular staff is on 3 days off, each shift, someone from a relief list has to come in and work in detention that day. So if you've got, let's say, 4 people working on day shift, 4 people working on evening shift, and 4 people working on midnight shift, and on a certain day of the week, 2 in each of those shifts are off on a regular day off. We backfill those days off with 2 people from a relief list. So on that day, if we pull the budget, you're going to have 6 extra officers that are going to show that they're in detention that day. Those relief officers oftentimes rotate between detention and teleserve. If you catch them on a day that they're in teleserve will be higher. Now, my bet is going to be that teleserve is 1.3 million fiscal year 2023 adopted and 1.1 million 2024 adopted. So on that given day, those relief officers are probably in detention and not in teleserve. That's the constant flux that you're going to see. I talked to Councilman LeBron about it too, because sometimes we see the numbers in the south end, budgetarily, personnel-wise, are higher than the budget and numbers in the north end, and sometimes we see it vice versa. These officers, some have permanent assignments. They're in the north end every day, they're in the south end every day, they're in detention every day, they're in teleserve every day. The relief officers, all the officers that we use to fill those days that those regular officers are not there, are all over the place, and they come from different places. And if you catch them on a day when we pull these numbers that they're in detention, detention will look higher. So it's hard to show actual staffing unless you looked at it, I would say, over a 7-day period. If you pulled it every day for 7 days, you would watch the ebb and flow of officers working in different places within the department. The steady officers will always count for the place that they are assigned. The flex officers, the relief officers, will constantly move based on the regular days off of those officers that are in those steady positions, if that makes sense.
Are you expecting there to be more staff needs for detention?
No.
Over the course of the next year?
Detention staffing has not changed in at least the last few years. We have not. The last time we had a significant staffing change was when the marshals stopped transporting prisoners for the weekend. We had to increase our officers because we actually had to house prisoners overnight in detention. That was 7 years ago, probably, or so. But no, detention staffing, front desk, teleserve staffing, those staffing numbers stay constant.
Okay, thank you. And then I want to pick up on one of your responses to questions from Councilwoman Hercules. You indicated that, and I think we all agree that community education is a huge component of police relations with the community. If you recall, her question had to do with understanding stops. Your answer, we need to better educate perhaps people as to why we're doing these stops. And I'm just wondering where in your department you would say that education piece, the community relations piece, where is the outreach? Which one of your different divisions here would have the people that go to the community meetings that could provide that kind of community education?
So we have public CompStat once a month. We do as much education around everything that we do and why we do it in public CompStat. We have started live streaming it on Facebook because it's hard, we don't get as many people watching it as I'd like to see. But public CompStat is a time where we talk about car stops, we talk about crime, we talk about our plans to reduce crime. Certainly the public safety meetings, same thing. When it comes to live in-person meetings, our CSOs and our district lieutenants and our district captains are out at all the NRZ meetings, all of the the community meetings out there where we talk about the same thing. We talk about crime, we talk about trends, we talk about things we can do. Hot topic right now is car breaks, hiding valuables, is Kias and Hyundais. If you have, we've actually just started to put together some pamphlets that we're going to have our officers leave on Kias and Hyundais that have a barcode where these folks can go scan that barcode and it'll give them resources where they might be able to get the problem that allows these Kias and Hyundais to be able to be started with a USB fixed. So we're always trying to find ways of doing that kind of outreach. Again, we've just finally been able to get the Citizens Police Academy off the ground. We do get a lot of value in having community members involved in some of our our commissions like the Firearms Discharge Review Board. They get a lot of training there that they do bring back to the community. There's social media. We exploit every opportunity that we have to do, that we can find to do community engagement and community education.
So it sounds like it's rather spread throughout the department in many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly probably concentrated in the Community Services Bureau. And now with the Citizens Academy, I mean, I wish we could put everybody through the Citizens Academy, but I mean, that'll be a process. That's the Police Academy that'll be running that. But I think Community Services Bureau, that's really their core function.
So, I don't see a Community Services Bureau in my list here.
It falls under the North and South.
Within the...
Right. So, like I said in the beginning, the Community Services Bureau is divided into two divisions, North and South.
Got it.
And then it's quadranted from there into Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest. And now there's a lieutenant in charge of each one of those quadrants of the city.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Chief, before I pass you on to Councilwoman Surgeon and I forget, do you have a grant writer?
No. Kinda. Laura does in planning and accreditation. She's taken some grant classes. She has a sergeant, Tiffany Wilson, that works for her. She's great. And then we do leverage our researcher from, where is she? Westfield. I always say Winnick, but it's Westfield State College, and she's actually been the one that's assisted us in the last 2 grants that we were successful in getting. She knows how to write in an academic way that gets us noticed. So it's really just been them that have done these grants.
Okay, and then, so I see here that grant programs, 2 million grants for ongoing support of the shooting team with aggressively investigates non-fatal shooting incidents. And then there's the cops hiring grant, which funds 2/3 of the salary for our recruits hired in the academy class starting next week. Is that from the grants from the Justice Department that allocate money?
It's the cops office.
I'm seeing her go.
Yeah, it's the cops office that, it's the cops grant is kind of changes. So we have 2 different versions of the cops grant working right now. We have, how many are on the original?
15.
So we have 15 on the cops grants that is 100% funded.
Sorry, it's 10 on the first one, it's 15 on the second one.
Okay, so 10 on the first, the 10 from the original, I think it's a 2020 or 2021 cops grant. 2020. So they don't expire right away. You can kind of fill them as you go. That funds 100% of the officer's salaries for 3 years, and then we have to maintain the officer for 1 year. We can't lay them off, which we're not in any danger of laying anybody off right now because we need cops. This new cops grant, where the 12 officers that are in the academy, they only fund 2/3 of the officer's salary. So it's strange, the cops office kind of changes the way that grant is allocated every year. But we went from 10 positions to 15 positions, but they only fund 60% of the 15. So if you do the math, they're probably giving us the same amount of money. They're just encouraging us to hire more people. And it's the same thing. They cover that for 3 years, and then we have to retain that officer for 1.
Okay, so in which line item would you allocate money for the grant writer?
There is no grant writer in the budget. I can ask for.
So when you hire or use someone outside the department, how is that allocated?
If I were to hire somebody outside, I can't really do that unless I have a position for them, and I don't have a grant writer position. We used to years ago, and then they centrally located it within City Hall. I believe there is a position for a grant writer out of City Hall.
Okay.
Our grants, the timetable that we have to do them in, a lot of times that didn't work out for us. So
Okay.
Laura took some classes, Tiffany took some classes, and we work with our professor, and it's been working for us. That's how we've gotten these grants. Now, the COPS office grant is more of like a pass-through grant. It's not a competitive grant. We apply for it. It's a boilerplate application that we do every year, and then they decide how much money they give us. It's not like these other two grants, the shooting team grant, the non-fatal shooting team grant, and the community violence intervention grant, the two other ones, the $2 million one and the $500,000 ones. Those were competitive grants where we competed with police departments from across the country, and we won based on the ideas that we put forward. So those are the two kind of different grants. That's where a grant writer really does come in handy, but I would take one if somebody wanted to give me one, but we've really been fortunate with leveraging the talent that we have to get those grants.
I'm just trying to figure out if you on a monthly basis, and I'll give you an example, I work for the Hartford Housing Authority, and we use some grant writers, right? And every month, we get this memo of all these grants, right? Do you want to apply? And then we have the option to put out a bid. So my concern is that there might be, maybe a lot of grants out there, but because you don't have, the right staffing, that we miss out on those grants.
Yeah,
But
that's...
I can,
That
have a
turns into an issue, right? When you have capacity, you don't want to apply for a grant that you can't then do because you don't have enough people to do it. The ones, we're very strategic about the ones that we look for, and the cops one is its goal is to hire more cops. So that one we definitely go after every year. And again, it's kind of a good deal. They pay for the person, even if they only pay for 2/3. It's 2/3 that we don't have to fund for 3 years, and then we have to keep them on the books for a year. I don't know that we've ever laid off a cop that was hired under a COPS grant. We've never done that as far as I know.
Thank you. Councilwoman Surgeon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, welcome. Thank you. Thank you again after 4 years, and thank your staff for bringing your staff with you. I apologize I wasn't here when you introduced everyone. So as Councilman LeBron said, this is our 4th year together. So I pretty much kind of got a feel for your budget over the last 3 years. So a couple things I remember in the last year we talked about was license plate readers.
Yep.
Didn't know if you built any additional in your budget for that?
We didn't, but we do have more. So the new integration of the in-car cameras, all of the cameras that are in our cruisers, now have LPR technology integrated into those cameras. So we have effectively increased probably, I don't know how many more that will equate to, but we're at about 75 in-car cameras, and all 75 of those cameras will have LPR technology built into the cameras. So as the officer's driving around during the day, you used to see those big things on the back of the car. They almost look like, we don't have those anymore. Now it's integrated right into the in-car camera as part of that technology suite. As these companies, our company is Axon, as these companies become more technologically advanced, you're getting more bang for your buck. Like some of our pole cameras now are able to have the LPR technology built right into the camera that's on the pole. So you're not seeing a separate unit, right? This big ugly thing that's glued to the car. You're now seeing the technology integrated into the camera itself.
Now, the only reason I visited your technology center in the Meadows, and I was highly impressed with the technology there. And I know by having the license plate reader, that was very helpful with accidents, hit and run accidents.
Yep.
So I was hoping you'd get some more. I don't know where they go, where you put them up at.
Now every cruiser that's driving around the city will have an active LPR going on.
Okay.
All while they're driving. And these things can pick up oncoming license plates too, in like 4 lanes over. The technology is incredible. When they're up and running, they're up to refresh this year, and that's when we're going to get those. You should take a look. We'll invite you back over. It's very cool.
It was just very impressive to know that you were able to hit and run accident, and within a couple of hours was able to go to the other town where the car is registered.
Yep.
So it is just impressive to actually see the technology and what it's doing to aid, in policing. The academy, looking forward to when that is going to start. I think we had that several years ago, a couple of decades ago in the city, and it was highly effective. The community enjoys, learning and interacting with the police officer. That was, so I think that whenever you get that up and running, it's going to be huge to build relationship with the community. Couple things. could you, I know maybe you don't have that information, but maybe through the budget department, a total number of grants you have to date for this fiscal year? Because I know the budget book doesn't really show that. I mean, it just estimated 22, but I would like to know the total for through, 2023.
There is a page, but I don't know what it is. I'll get it to you.
I couldn't find it. I found it for 22. But
I think
couldn't
it's in the back of the budget.
It's in the back of the book. All right, I'll look a little bit further then.
Councilman Gale usually finds it and quizzes
Yeah,
me
do
on
you-
it.
have you find-
I'm kind of glad that he didn't.
I need to
this
find 23 total grants received
For the police department?
just for the police department.
I can
Yeah.
certainly forward it to you. I do
Yeah.
know there's a page in it, and it always confuses me too because it's not in our section. It's
But I'm
in the
looking
back.
at
Section
22.
34, Councilwoman.
I'm looking at 22 too.
Section 34.
34. Okay, maybe I need to go further. All right.
I knew Councilman Gale would know
Thank
where
you
it
very
is.
much, Councilman Gill. 34. All right, so I've got to take a look at it and see if I've been keeping my wonderful assistants, as one of the things she's been doing is, as we accept grants, for the fiscal year,
Yep.
just trying to balance it back out to the budget.
I can also give you, a little bit better explanation of those. Our ones that we do every year are our traffic safety grants, our
Yeah.
OUI, operating under the influence, our distracted driving, our major city speeding, click it or ticket. Those are all reoccurring state grants that come out of the Department of Transportation. And every year, our traffic division overperforms, and we get a little bit more money, every year because they end up doing so well with those grants. Those are kind of our state grants, and we've kind of mentioned all the federal grants that we get, in addition to our, what's the other big one that we get for violence? PSN, Project Safe Neighborhoods. So I can give you a better breakdown of that.
Okay. Detectives, when you did your budget presentation, I know most of your sergeants, captains, so on and so forth, are civil servant position. They have to take a test for that. Is the detective position also test, or is it appointed?
No, it's appointed. It's a police officer on special assignment, so you won't see detective as a line item in the budget because it's a stipend that they get above and beyond the, their patrol officer pay. But that is a internal process. It's a request for transfer. It's a resume. It's an interview in front of a committee. But that is not part of civil service, no.
One of the things over the last couple of years, you kind of get used to your CSO officer. You kind of fall in love with them, and you don't want them to leave because they just get to know the community. So I'm going to lobby for my CSO officer. I think he has done a fabulous job over the last several years in being the CSO for Upper Albany. I think he's one of the police officers actually was extremely helpful in recovering a lot of guns off of the streets. So,
Did he tell you I'm going to move them? I'm just wondering because we just...
No, he didn't tell me that part, no.
One of the things that I did say, and I'm sure you're going to yell at me later, but is that I don't think that it benefits us to have a CSO in a CSO role for 10 or 12 or 15 years, and we do have some of those. The idea of a true community policing plan is that the community knows all of the police, not just one. So in the beginning of the year, I put out to the district commanders that oversee the Community Services Bureau, so the community service officers, a general plan that I wanted to see a rotational schedule for the community service officers and for our conditions officers. The conditions officers are our proactive kind of anti-crime unit. They go out there and they're the ones that bring in the majority of the guns. And to Councilman LeBron's point, you can get hardened if you do that kind of work for too long. They are going after some of our most dangerous criminals all the time. And what we saw in Memphis can happen in other places if these officers almost become, kind of too aggressive in their pursuit of justice. So the two areas that I wanted to see rotations happen were in the CSOs and in the conditions teams. But to avoid making too many enemies all at once, I gave it to them to formulate how they saw that as the best way to do it. So the CSOs by June are going to give me a plan basically to how to do this rotation through the sergeants, the lieutenants, and the captains that oversee the Community Services Bureau, because I don't want you to have just that one CSO's name in your phone. He could retire, he could go to another department, he could go out injured, and you only have that one number. I want you to get to know more officers. So I think, like, in my mind, a 3-year rotation, a 4-year rotation, and then that officer gets first dibs on working a car in your area. So that officer would go back to patrol, but that officer would work a patrol car still in your area. So he's still connected to you. But another officer would then get a little field training from him and then become the community service officer for your neighborhood. I had that rotation in place for the walk beats, because the walk beats technically fall under Community Service Bureau as well. So I didn't want to shake the hornet's nest too much. So I did it with the walk beats first. So I think that that's how we build the rapport with more than just one officer. There's 15 community service officers right now in the city, and I am planning on doing a rotation with them.
Here's the problem, Chief, is that you don't have time when you have to go from one call to the other call for the patrol person to actually get to know the neighborhood, okay?
Right.
Due to the staffing level we have. So by getting a relationship with your community service officer, they gather lots of information. I believe they share with detectives and other departments that goes on in the community. It's very difficult for me to understand, and I can, relate to the rotation, but then you are losing a trusted person that you can call. If they're on vacation, they normally would let you know they're on vacation this week and who's taking their place. And one of the things I believe the community service officer has done in the city is build relationships.
Yep.
Okay? And it's very difficult to build a relationship with someone when you don't have a call to you can reach, So that's where I have a problem with that. And not that you don't want the officer to excel and move on to something else and better his career in the department. And you don't mind them doing that. But the rotation that you are putting on the table, it takes a while to develop relationships.
It does.
With each neighborhood.
It does. But I have 15 community service officers right now. We're looking at, again, I have given the officers the ability to come up with this plan, right? You got to have some transformational leadership here. They've got to, take a stake in how this is done. And I think it's important that they do that. But we're looking at, potentially rotating 2 at a time. In a year or two, instead of 15 community service officers that you have the phone numbers for, there'll be 30. In another 2 years' time, there'll be 45. And that officer doesn't go away. We don't take their phone away. They're still permanent community service officer positions. I'm not getting rid of the position. What we're doing is rotating different people into those positions, and not every 30 days or anything. We're talking 3 to 4 years where you can establish that relationship. I want to do that with some overlap too. I want that officer to be able to get into that position for a month or so, have the existing community service officer introduce them around. That CSO that you're used to, you'll have that phone number, and you'll have the new phone number. I think that our officers, one, we need to engage our police. This younger generation always wants to do the next thing. So to keep them from moving to other police departments, I have to exploit our strengths. And our strengths in Hartford is that we're big, and there's a lot of places that they can go. If you go to Rocky Hill, you're going to be stuck on midnights for 10 years, and you're not going to see a promotional exam. If you stay here in Hartford, you might get into the rotation to be a community service officer. You might get into the rotation to be a detective. You might get into the rotation to be a conditions officer. I need to better leverage that mobility to the new officers to keep them here, because we aren't always as competitive in pay and some of the other things. We have to be competitive in keeping them engaged, and I think this is a way to do it. It's not set in stone, but it is an idea certainly that I floated. And to your first point with detective, if you look at the PowerPoint presentation on page 16, which is the second to last page, if you look at the percent minority numbers off to the right,
Yep.
if you start at the bottom in officer, you have 47.62% minority in officer, because that's our biggest pool, right? You look up to detective that's appointed, it's not civil service, it's based on resume, interview. The percent minority there is 40.28% racial and ethnic minority. And then when you go to the next category, which is sergeant, where the civil service process starts, you go to 28.57. You go to lieutenant, you go 30.43. So in that area where the department has autonomy to make selections is our highest area of minority representation.
I mean, I do see that looking at your numbers between your detective and your sergeant. I do see that percentage has increased, you know, out of 72 sworn officer, you know, those numbers are impressive, you know, without taking an exam. So I truly can understand, you know, where you want the possibility of retaining officers due to the fact that, you know, I believe all urban areas are a feeder city. That's what I consider Hartford Police Department to be, a feeder city in comparison to all of everybody else around the city. So I truly understand that, but I am going to still disagree with you when it comes to my community service officer and try to lobby to actually keep him. So thank you for your point of view, but please take in mind that the relationship we develop in the community is something that the Hartford Police Department is trying to solve for decades.
No doubt, and I will definitely take that into consideration, but just remember that my goal is to get that opportunity for all of our police officers, because they don't have time to engage and build relationships when they're going from call to call to call to call. And to Councilman LeBron's point, it's also, that's taxing on your mental health over time.
It is.
And to be able to sit back and develop relationships and to be appreciated like the CSOs are is an opportunity that has to be shared. So I will take your viewpoint in mind
and
if you take
my
mine.
mother, God bless her soul, appreciated our community service officer who's just stops in to make sure the senior is okay. That's a relationship that takes years to build.
Yep.
Okay. So thank you very much for that.
My community service officer is better than your community service officer.
We may have a disagreement here. Thank you.
If I can focus your anger on Councilman LeBron, I agree with him.
I also want to acknowledge on the screen that he has been with us, our Assistant Majority Leader, who's also my co-chair for the OMBGA Committee, Councilman Clark. What did I say? My Majority Leader, I'm sorry, we're going on 9 o'clock. So Chief, I want to thank you and your department. Please go back and tell the department thank you for the great work that they do every day under your leadership. Everyone be safe. To the members of our public.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just have one quick question.
I'm sorry, Councilman, you have the floor.
I don't mean to belabor the time. Chief, great presentation. Sorry I can't be there in person. I'm traveling back to Hartford now from downstate. However, I wanted to know regarding the cameras in the city that's monitored by C4, is there a need to increase, put more cameras on the streets for public safety?
I think that we all know how successful that camera program has been. There were some people that were skeptical in the beginning, but it's worth its weight in gold. There is always a need and an opportunity to grow that system. Chris Mastriani has done a great job with growing that system. In this CV, the Community Violence Intervention Program grant, the $2 million grant, there is a program called FUSIS that I can share more information about at Public Safety or offline that encourages, Atlanta, Georgia uses this program through FUSIS. It actually encourages public cameras to be able to feed in to our camera system So your gas station cameras, instead of us having to go out there and physically pull those DVRs and take those to download evidence, we stream that into our C4. It's part of this grant proposal. It's a new way to leverage cameras that we might not be able to put in certain places in the city. So we are doing that. As far as, there's also an infrastructure issue. As we start putting more fiber in the city, we can get more cameras in the city. I think, for the most part, the city's very well covered in cameras, and the areas where we can get, because the camera's only as good as the feed and how much it can store. And those areas that have fiber are where we get the most bang for our buck. So we're continuing to leverage those cameras and getting more of them in there. We've got a couple projects underway to increase some of the cameras in the city, but the big push right now is a public-private partnership through this grant, through this program called FUSIS.
And with that, there is no money that the city needs to put up through capital dollars for that program?
No, FUSIS is actually funded through the actual person that owns the camera pays a small fee, and that's what connects the camera to us. There is no cost to us. And I didn't think people would pay it, but I was proven wrong. There are people knocking down the door to get their cameras pushed into C4. In Atlanta, the program that they have, you actually put up a special light on your business that indicates to people that your cameras feed to the police department, and it's become a deterrent. These places are not getting broken into because they see this light that shows basically that the police department is monitoring their cameras, and it's really incredible. I thought it would be, there'd be privacy issues and people would stay away from it. It's been a huge success in Atlanta, and we're mirroring it here.
Okay, thank you. And sorry about that. And the last question is Project Longevity included in your fiscal year 24 budget?
No, we don't fund Project Longevity. OPM does. It's funded through the Justice Education Center through the state. But we just filled, the Justice Education Center just hired a services coordinator. So now both longevity positions are filled.
Okay, so we have a new coordinator or whatever that person is that heads up the...
Correct. We lost Mark Manson, the individual that was the services coordinator. Marlon was promoted to his position, and now they just hired a new service provider. So yes, longevity is filled, but that is funded through the state, not through my budget.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. So that concludes our meeting for this evening. This meeting is adjourned.
Announce tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm getting there. And please join us tomorrow at 5:30, where we will have, I ran out of battery, Health and Human Services
and Human Resources.
And Human Resources. So we'll see you all tomorrow at 5:30. Thank you.